Hey, what's happening, everyone? Welcome to the program. It's time for a podcast with all of these holes in the walls. It's video games. They're happening all around us, whether you like it or not, and we're here to talk about them. So strap the heck in for the podcast, man. There's been sometimes you just I don't know, man, like just stuff just piles up on you all at once, and you're like, wow, this is really messed up that that all of these things happened all at the same time. Everyone's been sick. I am groggy from a night of NyQuil, and then I don't know, a low grade fever of some kind. And everyone in the house is kind of on different stages of whatever this is. Some people seem to think it's RSV. But yeah, I don't know. The entire school has it apparently, and all of the parents. So yeah, it's our turn with that. That all happened in the middle of, and I didn't even realize I was sick at first, because for the past 3 days, today is the first day that they have not been there since, I guess, Friday. We've had these giant dehumidifiers in the house, here in this room, one right on the other side of the wall, and like 5 or 6 gigantic fans blowing air all around the house, trying to dry out the walls and the wood behind the drywall. After a pipe decided to start leaking and deposited water all up in under the floors and floorboards. Well, we don't have floorboards. We're kind of sitting on a cement foundation, thankfully. Otherwise, we'd probably have to tear up a whole lot of foundation. So yeah, so the fans were drying everything out and making it, or this room especially, an incredibly unpleasant place to be, because it's very hot and all this other stuff. So I would come in here, like we were shutting the fans off at night because everyone needed to sleep, and this room would still be 1,000,000,000,000 degrees, and so I would walk in here and just sit here in this sweltering heat and try to cool it down and whatever else. And so that was masking the part where I had a fever for multiple days, until last night I finally took my temperature because the machines were gone, and I was like, I feel bad. Like, oh, I have a fever, just like the baby does. Me and the baby having fevers. My wife was sick earlier than we were, and so she's I think on the other side of the fever part of it, but she's getting there as well. I'm fine, but foggy in the brain. That's probably from NyQuil. Like I've been sleeping okay, but I've been doping myself up. I've been drinking green NyQuil. I don't know if that's I told my wife I needed NyQuil a while ago, and this was 3 or 5. This is 20 illnesses ago. I said, "Oh, get some NyQuil," and she got some, and it was the green flavor. And I was like, I don't know if this means that you think that I'm tough enough to handle the nasty flavor of green NyQuil, or if you just don't care. I'll choose to believe the former. So yeah, I don't know. I've been kind of let's say out of it a little bit. I don't know. We're so yes, the all of this stuff was happening last week. The Friday stream was not able to happen. So and because of how the weekend went with everyone getting sick, I was like, I'm going to try to record some NES games getting ranked over the weekend, but then that could not happen for a variety of reasons. So we're just about on the other side of that, though. So now what has to happen is Wednesday, all of the walls are going to be repaired. And there's like over here on this side of the room, there's some drywall cut out and exposed pipes and wood and all this other stuff. So that stuff has to be, replaced. The wood behind the drywall is rotting at the bottom, so we're actually going to cut more drywall out and yank that whole piece of wood out and replace it before putting the wood, before putting new drywall in. And then all the baseboards have been yanked out and thrown away because they were ruined. And so there's work, and a bunch of the carpet pad also got cut out, so that has to be replaced as well. So that's happening. Wednesday. The dude. We got a new dude. Some folks moved in next door, and we were just up there talking. They're like, "Oh yeah, we got a guy who's coming in and doing the work. He's great." And I was like, "Great. We could use a dude." And so this dude's going to come over here and do that. And then Friday, we are getting the entire furnace. We're getting a heat pump. We're going to modernize. We're going to go modern. We're going to get a heat pump installed, a little bit more efficient than the previous thing. Turns out that because the leak was coming from a pipe under the furnace, not the furnace itself, it doesn't strictly need to be replaced. But in the middle of all this shit, we said, fuck it, man. They gave us a quote on a price a year ago, and the price was still good. I expected that it would have gone up in the last year. But I said, hook me up with that heat pump. And so Friday, they're going to come and do the heat pump. You may notice that Wednesday and Friday are the other 2 days that I stream. So I have no idea what's going to happen this week. I intend to stream in here while drywall work is being done, and maybe we'll try to rank some NES games in the middle of all of that happening. I don't know if they'll need to cut the power to do heat pump stuff, but we'll see. So Friday, who knows? Well, we'll get all this stuff back on track. In the middle of all of that, I've been trying to book appointments for the Summer Game Fest. And I've got some stuff booked, some stuff that because of everything that's been happening, some things that got all booked up that I am now not able to see, but that's fine, whatever. So yes, I spent a bunch of time yesterday booking appointments for. I got my, it's a good thing I got a laptop, so I got my laptop out in the other room, and I'm there, booking appointments and doing all this other stuff, and getting all of that, done. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's been ridiculous. I don't know what to even say about it. It's just everything happened all at once, and the baby's been sick, and she had a fever of almost 104 the other day, and then that went away almost immediately, and so she's doing fine, but she had a really high fever one night, and then it's been very low grade other than that, and she's been fine, in terms of her demeanor and everything else, and she's been sleeping okay, and all that. So it has not been as disruptive as some other illnesses have been, certainly, so at least there's been that, but yeah, it's been bananas around here. I guess I was not expecting all of that to happen, but here we are. So yeah, the upshot of this is, hopefully, with this stuff being fixed and replaced and all of this other stuff, hopefully this just won't happen again. I don't know, man. This is twice now, if you've been keeping track, that the water has leaked from the area where the furnace is, and completely ruined a bunch of wall and all this. So this time was less severe than the previous time, but still fucking crazy. So whatever, we're going to yank everything out, put in new stuff, and hopefully we'll never have to think about this ever again. I don't know. Do you really need walls is a good question, Snuffy McGee asks. So there's something to be said for being able to get down low and look through into the other room and go, oh. Unfortunately, as the holes in the walls get bigger, the kids want to crawl into them, and I don't want them to get trapped inside the walls. So So that's been the main concern is, I'm sure that there's a bunch of rusty nails in there and all sorts, whatever else. So, so that's the value of walls, I think. But yeah, so, I'm dealing with all that. I've been playing a few games and I watched a film. Let's take a quick break here. We'll come back. We'll talk about a collection of fighting games in a collection and more. Finding a licensed therapist in your area that takes your insurance, that is taking new patients, that is any good at their job. The list goes on, and it's easy to see how some people turn away from getting the help that they need because it can be such a hassle. Telehealth has made mental health care more convenient and accessible for a lot of people, but how are you going to find, if you're having trouble finding people locally, how are you going to sift through the zillions of people online doing all of that stuff to help find a suitable therapist? Or scheduling an appointment, and then dealing with the out-of-pocket cost because a lot of these, places aren't going to take your insurance. Rula is on a mission to make high-quality mental health care from a licensed professional easy and affordable for everyone. Rula's got you covered. They take most major insurance plans, and the average copay is only $15 per session. So you can get the quality care you need when you need it at a price that you can afford. But it isn't just affordable. Rula sticks with you throughout the journey to make sure that you get the best therapy and that you're making progress. With Rula, every provider is carefully vetted and chosen for their expertise. You'll always know that you're in the hands of a quality provider who is dedicated to making real progress in your care. The first step on your journey to mental well-being is easy. Rula starts by asking you a few questions about what's important to you and then provides a list of licensed in-network providers who match your preferences. Then you can schedule your preferred time and meet with your therapist as soon as the next day. When you think about how finding a therapist and all of that other stuff, just the it's going to be 3 months or again, they're, just not taking any new patients at all. I've seen that happen again and again and again. And it can be very discouraging. So being able to cast a wider net is nice. Go to rula.com/Jeff to get started today. That's RULA.com/Jeff for convenient therapy that's covered by insurance. Thousands have already trusted Rula to support them on their journey towards improved mental health and overall well-being. So head on over to rula.com/Jeff to get started today. After you sign up, they'll ask you what you heard about them. Let them know. Please support the show. Tell them we sent you. Go to rula.com/Jeff and take the first step towards better mental health today. You deserve quality care from someone who cares. Capcom Fighting Collection 2 is out. I've been playing this off and on for kind of a while now. It's been nice. It is another one of Capcom's collections. They have done, I think, a good job. They've created a museum with some decent stuff to look at if you're into that sort of thing. But really, it's a good collection of games that I think in some cases I just never really thought I would see again. Or that I just. Specifically, the Capcom versus SNK games. CVS Pro and CVS 2 are both in this collection, and those are fantastic, fun games. They're not always the most balanced or whatever, but they're a cool time. Capcom's take on the SNK roster is really entertaining, and there's just a ton of cool stuff to see there. And so those have been really the highlights for me is just being able to play CVS 2 and, and have like online support and all of that other stuff, in there. I think that's really neat. It also has, Capcom Fighting Evolution, which is not a great game, but is interesting in its own weird way. And so that's like a fun, it's like a fun inclusion. Street Fighter Alpha 3 Upper is there, which is an updated version of Alpha 3, Alpha 3. They brought some of this stuff out on console, and and then put some of it back into arcades, I think. Project Justice is in there, which that's a great, I mean, you know, just having Capcom acknowledge that Project Justice is a game that ever existed ever, is kind of cool. Plasma Sword, Plasma Sword, Nightmare of Bilstein is in there, which is the sequel to Star Gladiator. And Star Gladiator was always a weird, I don't know, man. Like, ain't no one out here talking about Star Gladiator. Star Gladiator, no one is. But I thought that those games were at least neat when they came out. I don't know. Like, Capcom had kind of a weird period there where, you know, like Project Justice was a great game, but like it never, I don't know, like it didn't really take off huge. It was just like, oh man, this is a really awesome game that unfortunately no one is playing. Same with Rival Schools, you know, it just wasn't, you know, the people who knew, and it didn't necessarily take off. But like Star Gladiator, I thought was an interesting take on a weapons fighter, on a 3D fighter, and I thought they did some interesting stuff there that made it like fun to, you know, kind of mess around with. So it's cool that any of them are included here. Like, is it perfect? Is it the right one? You know. And also Power Stone 1 and 2 are in here as well, which you know, whatever. I don't, that's not, I'm not 11. I don't want to play Power Stone. So you know, it is a very neat collection. And it's not like fully, I don't know, like, you know, some of these things get so Street Fighter centric or whatever. And I guess, you know, whatever. Capcom versus SNK is certainly Street Fighter centric in its own way, but like, I don't know, man, those games have such a cool visual style to them, and there's some great music in there, and so it's just really that's where this thing shines for me, is being able to play those games again. It's I wish that they would make another one, but also maybe we just need to not do this. I don't know. With, you know, the way Fatal Fury came out, and, you know, some of this other stuff, like, you know, it's just like, maybe the SNK stuff is just going to kind of be in a trench for a little while here, and you know, maybe they'll eventually kind of have another resurgence or something. But like, the Fatal Fury, Mark of the Wolves, City of the Wolves does not give me a great hope about the future of SNK. I guess like that game sold like miserably, and the CEO of SNK has been relegated to an advisory role, and people are connecting that dot and saying, because this happened, then now the CEO has been changed out. I don't think that they went ahead and announced that, but they apparently did spend quite a lot of money marketing that thing. And so it sounds like that they had some unrealistic expectations about how a Mark of the Wolves sequel was going to do in 2025. You know, even me as a large fan of Mark of the Wolves, like that game kind of snuck up on people. I don't know. Like, it wasn't until like someone started sending pictures of, like, I wasn't watching WrestleMania, but then someone, I saw a bunch of pictures of the ring and saw that it had the Fatal Fury logo in the middle of it, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess like all of that is just Saudi Arabia. Like, that is just all like the Saudi money. Like, they own 90+% of SNK. They do a bunch of business with the WWE. They do, you know, obviously they marketed it in select areas that it seemed like that they already had some form of influence, which just seems, I don't know, like a misunderstanding of like the audience that would want a fighting game. I don't know, like that just seems like when they go and they advertise on like boxing events or something, you're like, that's not the audience for your incredibly Japanese fighting game. Like, that's just not, that's not the, like, your system's heavy, like, that is not the audience for that. And so, yeah, I don't know. Between that and the guest characters, like, whatever. Like, City of the Wolves is a fucking bizarre. Like, there's just like a lot you could point to and go, look at this weird shit. and go like, wow, yeah, this is wow, whoever influenced all of this sort of stuff doesn't understand anything about how to make and market a game. This is like a really bunch of strange batch of choices made by people, and you know, maybe the CEO was to blame for that, or you know, maybe he was just answering calls that came from the investors, or who knows, man. Either way, I mean, either way, I don't think the game is great. So you know, at the end of the day, I think that's the kind of largest problem it has. Is I think that, you know, at the end of the day, the game is not awesome. So, even going and marketing it to death, like, I don't necessarily think that's something that's going to be successful in the long run. However, Capcom versus SNK 1 and 2, now those are some video games, and a great representation of the SNK fighters and all of that other stuff. So I think that's been exciting. It's yeah, I don't know, man. There's not much else to say about it, because it's pretty much exactly what you think it is. It's that batch of games. It's got online support. The online support seems to work well. And the museum has stuff in it that you can look at. And, you know, sometimes I appreciate the idea of museum content when it's like well annotated and contextualized. And I feel like this is not that per se. It's like, here's a bunch of docs that we scanned, and a bunch of them are in Japanese, so good luck. And you know, that stuff could be done a little bit better, but ultimately that stuff is not necessarily the main reason why I'm there. It's a shame. I do think that, like, there could be like, if you were to go to a digital eclipse, if you were able to say, you know, hey, let's actually do the definitive Street Fighter 2 package, you know, because Digital Eclipse has worked on them previously, but let's actually do like the kind of Gold Master series treatment for Street Fighter. I would love to watch that content. Like stuff that was about the development of Street Fighter 2. Like, we've seen all of the paperwork. We've seen all of the, well, did you know that Final Fight was originally this, and then this was going to be this? Like, you know, we've seen all that stuff, right? But I think, like, presenting that differently and contextualizing it and providing that content in a much more human way, I think would be fantastic. I would love to see something like that for a franchise like that. And so it's, as much as I think Capcom has done like okay with a lot of it, especially more recently, it's kind of emulation driven collections of fighting games and old arcade games. I think that there's a much larger story waiting to be told with a lot of this stuff. You know, we see bits and pieces of it in the museum content that has been released in these collections for over 20 years now, you know? And so I think something that was finally like, let's gather all of this material together and tell the real stories about what it was like to make this game. And the follow-ups, the Street Fighter 2s that to come, and why we made them, and all of that stuff. I would love to see something. I would love to see something like that finally be pursued and produced. But the stuff here is fine. You know, for what it is. I've also been playing a little bit of Deadzone Rogue, which came out last month. This is an early access game on PC. It's a first-person shooter, roguelite. I think you know it's a guy, you can shoot androids, and materials pop out of them, and then every few arenas you get to spend those materials on upgrades. You also get upgrade parts that are permanent upgrades, like, oh, what if my weapons did 10% more damage, or whatever. You have a pretty good dash into a run. Like, it's got a good feel to it. I think a lot of people have tried to do it a lot. Obviously, you know, like, we're so saturated on roguelite games at this point. The idea that someone just shipped one last month is kind of insane. But it's got co-op in it, which I have not tried, but that sounds conceptually really cool, and it plays well. I think that's the big part of it. Is I think there are a lot of very plain first person shooters, especially from smaller teams and stuff that we see, showing up just kind of on Steam in some kind of early access. Like, certainly not the first game to try to do a roguelite first person shooter. I mean, there's been very successful ones over the years for sure as well. But I like the way that this one looks and plays, and that goes a long way. Some of the upgrades have been interesting so far, and they kind of have you're picking missions before you go out on your runs, and so those missions are like things that pass for the story. Like, it is very much you wake up and go, where am I? How? Did I die? What happened? And so, the first thing you set out to do is to figure out what the hell happened. And so the way they integrate story into that looping run-based gameplay, I think works reasonably well. It's got a satisfying melee attack out of the gate, but then I thought, like, it's the start, I was like, oh, okay, he just has like a weird knife. And then it turns out, like, no, you can find and equip and upgrade melee weapons as well. So like, oh, okay. So suddenly I had a big axe that was doing way more damage and sweeping in an arc that would take out multiple enemies. And I was like, okay, yeah, okay. So there's even variety there too. It's pretty well done for what it is, I'll say. And if you're hearing this and saying, dude, why in the world would I ever want to play? Like, I played so much RoboQuest, I played so much this, I played so much that. Why would I want to play another one of these? I get it. Totally. If you're burned out on this concept, I don't think this is going to like reignite some massive passion for you. But I think if you're open to that concept at the moment, and I think all of us, like, that door opens and closes, right? I don't think, you don't, if you've ever been into that sort of thing, like you reach a saturation point and you're like, I just want to do something else. And then maybe that door creeps open. You're like, oh, this looks kind of good. Maybe I should check this out, and before you know it, you're sucked into something new. If that is where you're at in the roguelite cycle, I think that Deadzone Rogue has some things going for it that look kind of nice. So yeah, I don't know. At least go check out the trailer for that if that sounds at all interesting to you. We watched a Minecraft movie. We watched a movie called A Minecraft Movie over the weekend. The kids just they finally wanted to put it on, and then they sat there and kind of watched the whole thing, which was, I was surprised by their focus. I was surprised by the way that they like managed to at least stay in the room the whole time and didn't go run off and go do a bunch of other things. Like they would lose focus and run around and play with toys and do whatever. But like they watched most of the movie and then they watched it again. But I don't know, like, I don't think I would say that they necessarily loved it. It's weird, man. It's a really strange movie. In terms of, like, the structure of it as a film is very, like, there's a lot that they have to convey in a very short period of time. Or, like, you're left in a situation where, like, you're left wondering, like, man, did they make this movie and then did someone come in and say, hang on, what the fuck is Minecraft? How come you don't spend any time saying, what the fuck is Minecraft? And then they go, and so the first 7 or 8 minutes of that movie is this relentlessly paced little story of how Jack Black as Steve got his way into the Minecraft world. And so it is this, like, mess of a thing where they just are, like, hand waving away. He's just like, I yearned for the mines, and then and then they wouldn't let me in the mines because I was a kid, and then I grew up and I got a shitty job and I hated it, but I just couldn't figure out what was missing from my life, and then I remember what it was. It was the mines. And so I went back to the mines as an adult, and the same old man was there, but I pushed my way past him, and I dug, and then I found a thing, a portal, and then in the portal, I was able to go to the Minecraft world. And then in there, it was crazy because I could build a bunch of stuff, and then I found a portal to the Nether, and then in the Nether, there were a bunch of bad, evil pigs, and then I made a friends with a wolf, and then me and the wolf got captured, and I found this crazy item, and they wanted it, and so I gave it to the wolf, and the wolf took it and ran away with it, and he ran all the way back to Earth with this item and left it under my waterbed. And scene, and then you get the title card, and then from there it's, you know, then everything else happens. There's almost no explanation beyond that, and it just feels like this very forced, like we've got to force our way into the movie. We've got to get to the point where the movie can start, and we have to set up why any of this is happening. And so just push through this shit, and then fade up on a kid at a science fair or whatever, you know, and then it becomes the, like, you know, a kid in a ragtag group of idiots accidentally dope their way into a magical world, and then they got to figure out what the fuck's going on. And from that point, it's, you know, it is your stranger in a strange land, fish out of water, whatever thing, and it's fine. It's whatever. Jason Momoa as, like, washed up arcade guy, like, it's just a bunch of weird. There's just a bunch of weird stuff in that movie that you just look at and go, like, this feels like very superfluous. Like, I'm kind of into it that they go and they but even that stuff gets explained with, like, narration. You know, like, narrator comes on and goes, he was the world arcade champion in 1989, and now he's just a weird scumbag, and he buys a storage locker that happens to have been Steve's, and so now he's got the weird magic item anyway. And it's just like there's just a lot of stuff that gets kind of hand waved, like, then they did whatever, then they did this, then they did this, and then they're in the Minecraft world, and I don't know, and then Jason Momoa and Jack Black are flying through the air in a 69 configuration, and whatever, it's fine. And there's a shot where a guy hits a switch, and then you see a bunch of redstone lighting up, and you're like, okay, yeah, it's like the Minecraft. And so it's just it's weird because, like, a lot of it feels very like they wanted to make something that was, like, loosely true to Minecraft. You know, like, here's a little scene where, like, as they're falling, he throws some water out so that they land and don't get hurt because there's one block of water at the bottom, you know, like, it's little shit like that. But almost all of it is, like, weird, tricky shit like that, you know, like, if you know, like, you know, it is very much this kind of winking, like, if you've played a lot of Minecraft, you know, like a lot of people, you know, parents or whatever that have seen Minecraft, they're like, they understand the basics of it. But not like the, like, oh, well, here's how you save yourself from a fall, and here's this, and if you drop the lava on the chicken, it cooks it and does this, and, you know, there's stuff in there that you're like, oh, okay, weird, huh? Like, there's no basic, and I don't know, you know, like, that wouldn't necessarily have been, like, a good movie, right? But at no point do they punch a tree to get enough fucking wood to build a crafting table, you know? Like, there's no. It's really, it just kind of, it makes a lot of assumptions that you know a lot about Minecraft, and then also, like, very quickly hand waves that stuff away in favor of just, like, I don't know, like, here's your action, here's whatever, you know, like, it just kind of, it's a very strange movie. It's just a very strange movie. That's not to say it's necessarily, like, a bad movie. I just kind of came away from it just going, like, wow, this is, like, it's a really weird way to make this movie. I don't know that I would have necessarily had a better, I don't know that I necessarily have, like, a better way to tell this story. I think there's a lot of really weird stuff you kind of need to cover if you're going to set up the world of Minecraft, a world that doesn't necessarily have a story. But also, like, they did not finish Minecraft. You know, there's no. They did not, like, beat the game, if you will. And so, obviously I think that leaves them a place to go if and when they make another one or something. But like, there is just sort of a weirdly relentless feel to it. And, it's a lot of like just Jack Black pulling stuff out and making shit and just going like, oh, I just had that. It's not like, hey, we need to go gather resources to make a thing. It's like, oh yeah, here's this. Boom, 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 boom. Here's diamond armor. Here's this. We're getting this. Oh, here's this. Here's this. And, goofy little jokes about ender pearls and whatever. And I think that stuff, like, it works well enough, but I think you have to be like, to truly appreciate that movie, you kind of have to be a little, like, pretty well versed in Minecraft, which is sort of a weird thing to expect for, like, I mean, whatever. Minecraft is insanely popular, and a lot of people have deep knowledge of Minecraft, so it's probably a pretty safe bet. But I think, that movie is best appreciated if you know all that dumb shit. If you know all of the like nitty gritty, like, oh, well, you made this, and then that's why, when they have wings. Oh, they all have wings. That doesn't seem right, but okay, all right, we'll allow it because it's a movie. And so like that's sort of weird across the board that way. And so it straddles this line between, they want you to know a lot of stuff about Minecraft to get the most out of it, but then also it feels like they don't necessarily respect that part of the content. It's just kind of in there. And it's in there as ways to just kind of explain shit away sometimes. Of just like, oh, whatever, we're moving on to the next thing. Here's this, and whatever. And I think that's kind of strange. It's not, but again, it's not bad. Like, I think the performances are fine. And, like, you see that trailer, you know what that story is, right? You're just like, the kids are not confident. And then the creativity, they made stuff. Minecraft. And they saved the world somehow. Was it the Minecraft world, the real world? Both, probably. I don't know. Like, they don't go too hard on the recent Tron arc of like what happens if Tron dudes are in the real world, though there is kind of a sub plot where a villager gets out and goes on a first date with the principal of the school, played by Jennifer Coolidge. And so watching her eat dinner with this fucking guy who's going over is like, it's a good bit. It's a good bit. So yeah, it's just a fucking strange movie. I don't know. Like, I get why people are kind of all over the place on it, because I think like you have to bring a certain amount of shit to it to like fully understand it. And I could tell when we were watching it, the first time there was no reaction. The second time my daughter was like, "Oh, chicken jockey." Like, I could tell that she had heard it at school, but did not know that it was necessarily from this or anything like that. And so so that was sort of a weird thing there in the middle of all of that. But I don't know. I like, it seems like something that could have been a better movie, but also I think it kind of fulfilled the purpose that they set out. I mean, whatever, it did fine numbers wise. Like, I don't think people, I don't think people were like super mad at it. I think, like, again, parents and people with no kids and all this other stuff have like a lot of shit to say about it, and fuck them, who cares? But I do I come away from it going like, I came away from it thinking like, man, this is such a strange fucking movie. And I think that makes it interesting. Like, if you have any, if you have played enough Minecraft to feel like you might want to look at this thing, like, yeah, you should look at it. It's bizarre. Like, it's and I think you see some of the, it's funny. Yesterday, we were hanging out, and my son had the remote control, and he's just fumbling around, and you link from one movie to another. Next thing you know, he has managed to put on Nacho Libre, another Jack Black movie, same director. And so he immediately fell asleep. Then he pushed the button and went, huh, and passed out on the couch. And then I watched the first like half hour of Nacho Libre, which I had not seen since it was new. And it's very weird watching that after the Minecraft movie and going like, oh, huh, there's like kind of a like there is a there you see the imprints of the people on both movies just a little bit. The Minecraft movie less so, because it is such a breakneck thing, and it has to do so much and satisfy so many different partners and media, this and that. You know, like the Minecraft movie feels like a movie that is weighed down by a bunch of bullshit expectations from people who care more about the property than making a good movie. And then you see Nacho Libre and you're like, oh man, weird. Huh. That's real. It's kind of bizarre. And so, yeah, I don't know, like it's just an interesting thing to see some of that stuff. But yeah, that's I don't know. I wonder if that's going to become a staple in the house, if they're going to want to watch it over and over again, or if, you know, if we're safe from it for now. But that's kind of where we're at. Not terrible, but yeah, I don't know. Like it's yeah, like I said, it's just it's a very strange film. Let's take another break. We'll come back and we will get into the news. It's too easy to settle for doctors and stuff that don't really fit, you know? Dermatologist that isn't really finding the stuff that that you're concerned about. People that aren't answering your needs. A primary care doctor that has 6-month wait, you know, like all this other stuff. You have to drive over an hour to see a specialist that's in your network. Finding a doctor is a hassle. That's why there's ZocDoc. ZocDoc gives you options. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. So this is in-network appointments with more than 100,000 doctors across every specialty. From mental health to dental health, primary care to urgent care, and more. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance or they're located nearby, a good fit for whatever need you may have, or ones that are highly rated by verified patients. Once you find the right doctor, you can see their actual appointment openings. Choose a time slot that works for you, and you can click to instantly book a visit. It means you don't have to call them on the phone and hope that they're answering the phone and hope that the right person is answering the phone who can find an appointment for you. And then they call you back and say, oh, we don't have this time. Oh, man. All right. Well, we'll look. We don't have an hour for me to talk about booking doctor's appointments, but getting it done online. Nice and easy. Now we're talking. Appointments made through ZocDoc also happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score some same-day appointments. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/JeffG to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/JeffG. ZocDoc.com/JeffG. All right, we're back. Let's get into the news. Nintendo has put out a list of Nintendo Switch 1 games that will be receiving free updates. This is separate from the Zeldas and Mario Party or whatever. For games that are getting paid updates, there is a short list of games that will be getting updates. It says that in all of these cases that the updates will be available on June 5th. And so, these are timed to launch. It is an interesting list. It opens with ARMS, everyone's favorite Nintendo Switch game, ARMS. Yes, it will be receiving an update for the Switch 2. They've listed some updates here. They've listed kind of what they're doing for each one of these games. ARMS will be getting HDR support. That is any game. The screen on the Switch 2 is not HDR compliant. That is only if you are docked. Visuals optimized for the Nintendo Switch 2 display and high-resolution TVs for improved image quality. Frame rate optimized for Nintendo Switch 2 for smoother movement, even with playing with 3 or more players. So arms users rise up. That is not the only game on the list. Big Brain Academy, Brain versus Brain, will get an update to add game share support. It says here up to 4 people can play in party mode, share locally, or share online via game chat. Captain Toad Treasure Tracker will be getting HDR support and optimized display and improved image quality. It will also get game share support. 2 players can play all the courses. You can share locally or share online via game chat. Clubhouse Games 51 Worldwide Classics will be getting game share support. Up to 4 people can play 34 games. So there's 51 games. 34 of them can be played by 4 people. You can share locally or share online via game chat. Game Builder Garage. Everyone's favorite. Game Builder Garage was cool. That will be getting updated visuals, improved image quality. It will also be getting mouse support. So that is one of the, I think, the only case of mouse support getting added to one of these Switch 1 games. I mean, unless you count Metroid Prime, but that's in the future. New Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe will get updated visuals. Again, and the bullet point for this is the same for all the games. Optimized for the Nintendo Switch 2 display and high-resolution TVs for improved image quality. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet will be getting improved frame rate. It says improved for smoother movement on Nintendo Switch 2. And will also have upgraded visuals. Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury will be getting an update. Let's see here. This is getting like every bullet point they've got. It will get improved image quality. It will get improved frame rate. It will get HDR support, but only in Bowser's Fury. It will also get game share support, so up to 4 people can play Super Mario 3D World. In Bowser's Fury, 2 people can play together, with one player controlling Mario and the other controlling Bowser Jr., and you can share locally or share online via game chat. Super Mario Odyssey will get HDR support and improved visuals. It will also get game share support, so a second player can control Cappy. And the 2, classic-styled, Game Boy-style Zelda games, Echoes of Wisdom and Link's Awakening, will be getting enhanced visuals and HDR support. So improved image quality as well as HDR support. I'm surprised that that's not a thing where they're saying, hey, the frame rate's going to be better, because it could use it. But hey, that's it for now. I mean, these are the games that are in the launch window. It's certainly entirely possible that they put more into some of these games, some of these other games down the line. I don't know. Yeah, Super Mario Wonder would be something that maybe, that might be nice to, get a resolution upgrade or something like that. But yeah, we'll see. Will some of these games, the games that are not mentioned here, will they receive kind of just kind of sly, passive frame rate updates just by virtue of running on more powerful hardware? I don't really know, how that will go. So maybe something like Link's Awakening will receive some assistance on its own, without them directly mentioning it will have smoother frame rate, but we don't really know. Yeah, Hyrule Warriors would be one that, I think that there's just a handful of games over the run of the Nintendo Switch that stick out as like, man, this did not run great, that it would be nice to see them go back and just do all of those. Also the, Mario Maker 2 kind of sticks out as a game that maybe would benefit from mouse support, and it's not getting it. I can't say I'm surprised there. Again, maybe we see some more updates along these lines over the coming months, and maybe they do eventually get there, and maybe they do pay some attention to Mario Maker 2. But to me, the Mario Maker 2 thing just feels like a closed door. They put out their updates. It did what it did. It's done. They're not necessarily interested in revisiting it. It's certainly possible that, hey, maybe they make a 3 someday. I don't know. I just have my doubts, man. I don't think that I don't think that Nintendo ever fully got the true power of those Mario Maker games. I think that the way that they treated them post-release, the way that they handled kind of unintended behavior with some of the level editors and patched out a lot of neat glitches and tricks that weren't hurting anyone, I think sends a very clear message that they fucking suck. I don't know, man. Like they're you know, they were not they just did not understand why people really enjoyed that game, why that first game especially had the longevity that it did. And I think if they just had a more active kind of role in the community overall, which is a very not Nintendo thing to do, but to have someone, you know, whether it's a visible community manager or something, you know, something that like a game made outside of Japan would be a little more likely to do, to just work with the community and speak to the community instead of like this more ivory tower, like, here's our update, it shuts down all the stuff you've been doing. Don't like it? I think that sucks. I think it's just a, you know, it makes it very hard to want to ever get invested in anything Nintendo does that might have some sort of community thing. And I'm sure, like, you know, Smash Brothers players have probably been feeling this way in various forms off and on over the years or whatever, but it just feels like anything Nintendo that gets any kind of you know, following of people that want to do weird stuff with it, and you know, and whatever else, like Nintendo just doesn't understand that, and they're just like, nope, these are toys for kids, shut the fuck up, we're patching out all this stuff you've been doing. And I don't know, it's their game and they're gonna remind you that it's their game every chance they get. Nintendo has also apologized for an error. This is coming to us from NintendoLife.com, who got a statement out of Nintendo about the presence of variable refresh rate. If you remember, Nintendo did at one time claim that the Switch 2 would have VRR support on TVs. They have since updated all of the mentions of that to be only to make sure that it only refers to handheld mode. So it will have variable refresh rate in handheld mode, but it will not have it when docked to a television. The statement that Nintendo Life got is, Nintendo Switch 2 supports VRR in handheld mode only. The incorrect information was initially published on the Nintendo Switch 2 website, and we apologize for the error. When asked, like, hey, are you patching that in later? The only response they gave was, we have nothing to announce on this topic. So I don't think that's a mistake that they just make. I don't think that they put all that stuff on the website and then go, oh shit, no, you know, I don't think that that's like I don't think that's a slip of the tongue sort of thing. My guess here, and I can only guess, my guess here is that at one time that was planned for launch, and then at some point they went, oh shit, dude, no, like, it's not going to make it. We're not sure if it's ever going to make it. You know, like there's some of the rumors around, you know, why early access to the Switch 2 has been a little more locked down than one might expect, has pointed to the idea of a gigantic day one update that maybe the firmware, and this is whatever. Every system is like this, I should say, before we get into this topic. The PlayStation 5, we got a massive firmware update days after we received the console that updated it to what is supposed to be the launch day firmware. And even that wasn't the launch day firmware. There was another one on actual launch day. Anyway, so the theory then is that there will be a sizable firmware update on day one that will get them where they need to be, which makes sense. I mean, they have been rolling these things off manufacturing lines for a long time, which leaves plenty of time for the kind of system software team to continue to work on things. And so I'm guessing that they don't want to say anything about if and when it is coming. And if they can do it, they'll do it. But my guess is that at some point in the rush, like the final push to get this thing out the door, they probably went like, oh shit, okay. Yeah, this is not going to make it for day one. We're cutting this feature. We're doing, or whatever. And my guess is that that is the case, and maybe we will still get it down the line, but we'll see. Yeah, unless there's some sort of HDMI incompatibility, and then that would just be a legitimate mistake, because if it is something in hardware, then yeah, maybe there is something there. But my guess is because they published all of this stuff pretty confidently at the initial rollout, and it took them some time to remove it, that to me sounds like a software issue and not a hardware issue, because obviously when they started publishing the Switch 2 information, the hardware was already pretty locked. And by pretty locked, I mean they're already in boxes somewhere, just about ready to go. So, so that would have been a decision about variable refresh rate. That would have been a decision they made years ago about HDMI. So, which would indicate that they would not make this mistake, if you get my meaning. So, my guess is that this is something on the hardware side. Or I'm sorry. My guess is that this is something on the software side that maybe they will be able to fix if they have the resources to do so. But we will see. Bungie, man. On the subject of being unable to catch a fucking break, though also this, this. There's a lot of people at Bungie that probably don't deserve this, is my point. But also, some humans made some extremely fucking bad choices along the way here, and fucked a lot of people over in the process, from the sounds of things. Marathon, they had their alpha, and so there was more and more footage of Marathon out there all the time, and they have been announcing and showing things, and so that has led to an artist who does not work for Bungie, known as Anti-Real, speaking up and saying, hey, there's a lot of stuff in that game that I made in 2017, and look, and showing aspects of their work, and then aspects of like stuff that was in the Marathon alpha, and going like, this is stolen. Like, you straight up stole this shit. And you look at it and you go, oh yeah, that's, yes. The Marathon Alpha recently released, and its environments are covered with assets lifted from poster designs I made in 2017. Bungie is, of course, not obligated to hire me when making a game that draws overwhelmingly from the same design language I've refined for the last decade, but clearly my work was good enough to pillage for ideas and plaster all over the game without pay or attribution. And so Bungie went ahead and investigated this claim, and they discovered that, yes, a former artist at the company, meaning someone who probably recently just got laid off, had used those designs and left those designs, and those designs got checked in and whatever, however that happened. This is from Eurogamer's kind of collection of all of this shit, man. There's a lot of back and forth, man, around Marathon, for sure. So yes, Bungie did investigate and found that a former artist at the company did use that artist's designs. This issue was unknown by our existing art team, and we are still reviewing how this oversight occurred. We take matters like this very seriously, and we reached out to discuss this issue and are committed to do right by the artist. As a matter of policy, we do not use the work of artists without their permission. And they are conducting a thorough review of their in-game assets, specifically those done by the former Bungie artist, and implementing stricter checks to document all artist contributions. And so, yeah, this happened to them a handful of times during the run of Destiny 2. And so now, all these years later, to have it happen again on another game, like, I guess the thing I could say is this shit happens. but also this is impossibly unprofessional to have happen this many different times and to still be like, we're going to implement stricter checks. We got to, fuck, man. Like, artists are going to look at stuff and they're going to go, oh, this is my mood board. This is, this is maybe some of the visual language we want to use, and kind of, you know, looking at those designs and all that other stuff. You could argue that, like, that is also not okay. That them, you know, using this stuff and using it as very direct inspiration, instead of just saying like, well, if we like what that artist is doing, why don't we go get that artist? But, you know, that is something that has been a situation for a much longer time and encompasses much more than just Bungie. However, that stuff worming its way into the game, obviously, it's one thing to like look at a screenshot of a thing and maybe save the screenshot to your desktop and go, that looks sick. What if our game looked sick in a similar but not identical way? It's another thing for that to be like, oh, and then also just for shits and giggles, what if we put this image that I've had on my desktop for the last 9 months? What if we put that onto a gun? Oh, that does look pretty good. I'll be sure to change it later. Whoops, I got fired. I guess I'm not going to be able to change that out. Oops. I don't know. Like it's you know, I don't think that there's anything like it. I don't think you can look at this as like malicious, right? No one's going to go, because no one gets away with it. No one's going to go like, I'm fucking stealing this shit. Ha ha ha, you know. But I do think that, you know, like this is, unless that artist knows that they're about to get laid off and they're just like, I'm checking in all this stuff that's not mine. Fuck off. Deal with it, assholes. You know, maybe, but like that's not. I don't think it's malicious at a company level, because it's not worth it. It's not worth it at all for what it does to the team, for what it does to the perception of the game, all that other stuff. Like, to do this maliciously and deliberately is just stupid. That it is too stupid for them to try to do. But however, it is like there is a certain level of incompetence that this has happened multiple times, and every time they've been like, well, we're looking to implement more checks, and I don't, you know, I believe it that this shit happens. I believe it that this shit can happen, but also again, so again, another kid. So it's just, yeah, I think at some point, I don't know what you do. I don't know what you do. I wouldn't know. I'll put it to you this way: if I was in charge of Bungie, I would not know immediately how to fight this, other than, okay, any asset that gets checked into the game, period, we have to send to lawyers. We have to send through this insane process that is, you know, maybe unrealistic in some ways, to make sure that we are. But like, that's how you have to do it, right? I mean, that's if you have to ensure that your multi-million fucking dollar project is not getting caught up in these controversies every 5 years, like, then I guess clearly you need to have something like that in there. You need to make sure that this stuff is actually yours. It's the same thing sometimes working with external musicians, and any professional musician's not going to do this, but like, you know, it's like, oh, whoops, sorry, I put an uncleared sample in this thing, and then you went to go use it in your thing and you got hit, and whoa, you know, stuff like that has happened in commercials and things of that nature over the years. And, you know, like, so stuff like that can happen. But again, to have it happen this many times, it's a larger thing. And then, you know, once you get away from the, like, okay, there are individual, there's individual words and textures and verbiage and stuff that you go like, oh, this is exactly this. This isn't like you made it look like this, but it says something different. This is, you pasted this other artist's work into the game. It's not good. And so that's indefensible. But I do think that if you pull back a little bit and you go like, oh, we based the entire cool visual style of our game off of this. I mean, everyone has inspirations, right? Like all art is inspired by something else. I think is a, you know, pretty, but, and so like, I think that happens, but like, how do you, again, like, you know, you then you go and look at the, you know, a big chunk of the, like the style of Marathon, and you go, oh yeah, this is a style that this artist has been working on for a good long time. So like, So then, it's not just that this individual texture got copied over. It's that you kind of just, jack this fucking style. Like, it's not your shit at that point. So like, what do you do? It's a bad situation on top of a bad situation. I liken some of this stuff to, and it's this where this falls apart is that Bungie is a fucking gigantic company who is also owned by fucking Sony, who is an even gigantic company. I think unauthorized sampling is fucking good. I think it's fun. I think it's awesome. I think if you're going to go do commercial work and try to make money off of uncleared samples, that's a problem. But if you're just putting shit out and you're like, fuck you, I'm posting this on SoundCloud and I don't give a shit. Like, dude, yeah, man, fucking awesome. Yes, let's do it. What was just like Prince Paul did, just like the Dust Brothers did. Just like the Justified Ancients of Mumu did. And then they had to burn all those records in that field. Fuck it. But, then when you go try to make it a commercial work and all this other stuff is when a lot of that stuff gets sticky. And we have implemented laws and rules around sampling and all of this other stuff. I don't think the same thing applies to visual work. I don't think you can... I don't think a lot of the rules around audio sampling and stuff, I don't think a lot of that would ever be able to be applied to a visual style. And so but it's a thing I always have to navigate personally because I look at it and go like, dude, when I steal a bunch of samples to make a fucking thing and then don't do anything with it because I just did it for me and I go like, ha, this is stupid and send it to a few friends or whatever. Or when Vaporwave came along and it's, but and it was before it was commercialized and it was just people putting stuff out on the internet. You look at it and go like, yeah, I mean, the entirety of culture at a certain point, and this is the argument that I think a lot of the AI scumbags will make. The entirety of like culture with the idea of memes, like none of that is technically legal. None of that is. Like, hey, I took 3 seconds from this. I took 3 seconds from this movie and I looped it and I posted it to the internet with some words under it. And it's Antonio Banderas doing this thing. And isn't that funny? Like, yeah, I got you. Sure. It's hilarious. But like Antonio Banderas does not get money for that. Should he? Like, if you want to ask this question, like ask it all the way, right? The number of times that Drew Scanlon's face appeared on the internet. I mean, the sad thing there is that, Drew did not even own that content. I think CBS did. And so when whatever beer company licensed it for a Super Bowl ad, I don't think that Drew got any of that. And so, but my point is like at some point when you are doing this at a commercial level, when you are making a Super Bowl commercial or a gigantic video game like Marathon, you have to make sure that your shit is legit. If it's some fuckos going over here and making a non-commercial thing and they're just like, I put Mario in it, fuck you. Like, I'm like, yes, hell yeah, you did. Hell yeah, you put fucking Mario in this. The fan game community, ROM hacks, all that other stuff. There's such a large, nuanced mess to all of this stuff, right? And so, at the end of the day, I think that a lot of this stuff gets very complicated very quickly, except for the part that, again, Bungie is a Sony-owned entity, a massive corporation, all of this other stuff. And so, so whatever, man. Like none of that shit that we were just talking about applies in that situation. So I obviously they say that they're going to try to make it right by the artist, and I hope they do. And it sounds like that, the other reports along this say that that morale at Bungie is fucking bad. They were going to put out they had a live stream scheduled where they were going to show a bunch of new stuff and talk about things they learned in the alpha. Instead, according to Eurogamer's recap of that, they said, hey, we had planned to show a lot more stuff, but for a lot of reasons we're about to get into, we decided not to show a bunch of this stuff. But we're going to be discussing a lot of what we learned through the alpha and some of our plans going forward. And he says this is from Joe Ziegler, who's the current game director. And he's quoted as saying that they were still scrubbing all of their assets to make sure that they're being respectful of the situation. And that a lot of this stuff got checked in the year 2020. That came from the art director Joe Cross, who read a statement about it. The decal sheet included icons and text elements. These elements ended up in our alpha build, and there's absolutely no excuse for this oversight, and we are working on and 100% committed to our review process to ensure instances like this don't happen again on Marathon or at Bungie. And they go on to cite some other reporting that morale is in free fall, and that the team has already been scrambling with some of the conversation around the alpha itself, and that having this over their head now, where suddenly, you know, Sony legal is involved and all of this other stuff to try to figure out how to unfuck this thing, like that it is not been a fun place to work here. Some of the stuff comes from Forbes, who describes the situation as staff has been uneasy with the direction of development, saying, quote, as far back as 5 years ago, devs were telling management what would and wouldn't work and were often ignored. Many have said previously that it needed to have some sort of PvE component. And that, legal teams are still looking into what the hell happened with those assets. And the game is still scheduled to be out September 23rd. So there's been some other stuff going around about Marathon and what it's going to need to succeed. That some folks saying like, oh, it needs to be a top 5 selling game for the year 2025 in order to be viewed as a success. Which, you know, for the number of years it's been in development and the number of people who've been working on it for that number of years and all the, like, once you back out the budget into like, here's the amount of money we have spent making this game. You probably do eventually get to a point where you're like, yeah, we have to sell a lot of these in order to break even. We have to sell even more of these in order to be considered a financial success. Obviously they will I assume they will have some form of cosmetics. I think they have said as much in terms of additional kind of post-release content. And so, you know, there's always the chance for them to make money going forward. I don't know that I necessarily want to get too deep into this like top 5 sales thing, because I think, you know, like it's a problem that I think a lot of games run into budget wise, where you just go like, okay, like the right thing to do for this game is to push it back. The right thing to do for this game is to spend this money here and do this. And, you know, and so the game gets more expensive over time because you're pushing it back, or you are, you know, changing your marketing plans to cover this or that, or, you know, there are things along the way that just make a game more and more expensive. And so you hear things like that a lot, I guess, is my point. And the thing I want to say is, you know, I think it's tempting. I think you can take some of that with a bit of a grain of salt, insofar as every game with a big budget is in a position where they're just like, fuck, dude, if we don't sell a fucking fuckload of these, it's all or nothing, man. A lot of games are like that. That's not unheard of. You know, we hear about Dragon Age and the expectations on the sales of Dragon Age. That's not necessarily like it's not that EA, Andrew Wilson isn't sitting in an office going, if this game doesn't make this, it's got to do this. Instead, he's saying these games should turn a profit. We want to make money at Electronic Arts. We want to build value for our shareholders. Whatever nasty version of that sentence you want to say. And then you take something like Dragon Age and back it out into the number of years they spent working on a Dragon Age project and then like, oh, we've got to hit it, we've got to pivot hard because this fucking weird multiplayer thing we're working on is not going to be any good, and it's not what people want, and so we need to do this. And so all of those decisions cost money every step of the way. And so as a game like Dragon Age gets pushed further and further out, every one of those decisions is made in the best interests of the game, in theory, right? And so every step of the way, you're going like, oh, if we want this game to be a success, this part doesn't work. And so we need to throw all that work away, pivot it this way, and go forward like this. And you're like, okay, cool. Like, that's the right thing for the game. Because if we stay on this track, we know it's fucked. If we do this, then maybe we can get to a point where it'll be a good game. But also, you're just ratcheting up the risk. You're ratcheting up the amount of money spent, and you're ratcheting up the expectations that it will then have on the sales side. Because at no point are they going to get on an earnings call and go, Dragon Age sold in line with expectations, meaning it lost us a fuck ton of money because we spent too many years making it. Like, they're just not going to do that. They're going to go, hey, our sales expectations for Dragon Age were this because this was the break-even point for this game, and so these are the expectations we were forced to have for this game, even though everyone with half a brain can look at those numbers and go, there's no way we're going to fucking hit that. I don't know if you've looked around out here at how games are selling, especially games in this segment. Like, we're not making Baldur's Gate 3 over here. I don't think it's going to fucking happen. Like, no one, I don't think anyone was surprised or fooled or whatever. Like, I don't even think Dragon Age necessarily did bad for the game it was. But unfortunately, it was like 2 or 3 games before that. And all that money adds up. And so Marathon, I think, is, a game that is entering into similar territory, right? It's a game that's been pushed off. It's, been shown late. And now they're saddled with having to revisit every art asset. That game is out in 4 months, just about 4 months. And so that is not that much time. So but also, if they were to take Marathon and say, oh, we're going to push this out another 12 months, is anyone confident? And I don't know the answer to this question, ultimately, because I don't work at Bungie and I don't work at Sony. If you were to give them another year, what would that do? It would be another year of paying everyone's salaries and all of this other stuff. And, like it would be another year of expenses for a game that is still not out. Would the final product be better enough? Would it sell better enough to make up for not only that year, but all of the years before it that they have already spent all that money on? And so those are the decisions. I think when a game gets delayed, you have to sit there and just go like, okay, like, is this delay going to work out positively for us in the long run? I mean, if we ship it now, we know the game is shit and we know it's not going to do it, but also we've delayed it so many times that we can't afford to do it. There's like that sort of, cost benefit analysis, I guess, is what that would be, right? We talk about games sometimes that are just like, oh, is this game actually did this game ever have a shot? And I think sometimes the answer is no. And it's not necessarily anyone's fault that are the rank and file, the people who are working on the game. Just sometimes you're like, well, yeah, I don't know. Like the management pivoted this game hard at one point, and we were, this was going to go one way and it went another, and we're already saddled with 2 years of fucking debt on this game because we were doing this other thing and now we're doing this. Like the things that some games get saddled with from a budgetary standpoint, there's no hope for them to ever fully recoup. And so, these public companies are never going to, they're never going to say, hey, we didn't think this was going to make all its money back anyway, but we recouped 80% of what we spent on it at least, and so we're only doing that's never, no one's ever going to say that. No one's ever going to get on an earnings call and say we were expecting failure, because that's not how Wall Street works. No one wants to hear that, and so it always has to be like, yeah, well, it did, it didn't meet expectations. It's like they don't never get into the part where the expectations were wildly unrealistic for the market and what it would bear and the number. You know, you look at the way games are selling this year. You know, Assassins has done quite well. Monster Hunter has done incredibly well this year. You know, is Marathon going to enter into that? I'm going to say from and you know, if I take myself out of it and just kind of look at the reaction I've seen from people who are very big Destiny 2 players, from people who are big Marathon fans from the original days of Marathon, and a wide range of people who, you know, who I've seen play this Marathon alpha and come out of it. I don't think I've seen a single person come away from it going like, fuck yeah, like that have been like, this is everything I wanted. Like, I don't think I've seen anyone purely 5-star satisfied with the presentation, with the package, any aspect of it. It's been more like, well, I really like the look of this, but I don't necessarily like this aspect of it. I don't think works. This aspect, you know, it's been, at best, I've seen people come away from it going like, I had a really good time, but this part of it, or this part of it, or this part of it, you know, and so I kind of look at like that. If you take that at face value and say like, oh, the sales expectations of this are crazy. I think it's I don't see a world in which that actually comes to pass. I just don't. I don't see a world where Marathon generates enough excitement and sales to actually get there. And so I don't really know how it's going to go for them, for Bungie as a company, past a certain point, right? And so it's alarming, all of this stuff. As someone who wants to see Bungie continue to make games for years to come, I look at this and just go, I don't know how this goes forward. I don't know how Sony continues to fund this studio going forward unless they've got an incredible pitch, and they make some cut. You know, like there's a certain amount of stuff stacked against Bungie as a result of them being sold to Sony. Though, you know, if they were still independent, I think they would be up against a different type of wall. You know, they would be under a different gun, but it would still be a gun. And so, yeah, I don't really know what happens there long term. Maybe you pare it down and make it a single, you know, just like, hey, we're going to make one game and one game only. We're not going to work on this mobile thing and this and that, you know, like let's focus on a core competency and make a good first person shooter and try to rebuild from there. I don't know, but, you know, Sony's desires in the live service space are so strange, and it's hard to know where they're sitting at the moment, because they obviously spent a long time talking up like how they wanted 12 of these things and this and that, you know, and now they've taken some hits from Conquered and from the realities of what Destiny 2 happened. You know, I think there's just, I wonder what their ongoing appetite for that style of thing. But yeah, I don't know what I don't know what the long-term prognosis will be, and whatever, you know, like it's not, you know, I don't want to doom and gloom it at this point. I will say that I just, you know, if those are true, if it's true that the sales expectations are really that high for Marathon, I just don't see a situation where that happens, unless that game is dramatically different from what that alpha was. But we'll see. People are talking up Arc Raiders quite a bit. I mean, not to, you know, but in terms of finding ways to do something that is extraction shooter adjacent, it sounds like Arc Raiders has people have been interested in that more than I would have immediately thought, considering considering that Arc Raiders was at one point a very different game too. Man, what a mess. Speaking of messes, Randy Pitchford is in the news. This is there are, you know, in the world of video games, there are a lot of unforced errors. There are a lot of mistakes. There are a lot of things that you just look at and go like, you didn't need to do this. You didn't need to do this. You could have just not said anything. And I'm sure that there are people at 2K that are just like, now that we own this studio, can we get this guy to stop saying things? Because it seems like every fifth thing he says is a setback for the game. Someone on social media was complaining to Randy Pitchford about game prices. And I think that this kind of starts in a dumb place. Randy, this game better not be $80. Don't take that risk. A lot of gamers aren't going to pay $80 and feed this notion of constant increase of the price tag. You're the CEO. You have some say with the price when it comes to your publisher, which is a gross misunderstanding of how any of this works, but okay. I've said before, we talked about it last week. I don't think the $80 thing is necessarily a done deal. I think we will get there eventually, but I think that people looking at Mario Kart and going, that's it, it's over. I don't think it's quite as cut and dry as that. Microsoft is going to attempt $80 on some games as well, and we'll kind of see where that nets out. And maybe for the highest of highest tier games, maybe you start to see it. But just like we didn't necessarily see every game go to $70 immediately, I don't think it's a guarantee that everyone's going to go there, especially not right away. We probably do get to a point where, the bigger games are going to try to pull off $80. But again, I think that, these games already have their tiered releases and packed in DLC and bonus skins and all this other shit. So like the people that are the big day one fans of a thing are the ones that are already paying $100 for a thing or more because they want hot skins. People love hot skins. The kids love hot skins. Randy Pitchford responded to that dumb message. He says, A, not my call. B, if you're a real fan, you'll find a way to make it happen. Dude, you don't need to do this. At no point do you need to try to draw a line in the sand and say, real Borderlands fans will find a way to get $80. Real fans. If you're not a real fan, then hey, I guess maybe wait for a sale. But real fans will find a way to make it happen. And then he has an anecdote here that I share. I have a similar, this is how it was. He's not wrong. My local game store had Starflight for Sega Genesis for $80 in 1991 when I was just out of high school, working minimum wage at an ice cream parlor in Pismo Beach, and I found a way to make it happen. Real Starflight fans. So yeah, that's true. There were definitely some cartridge-based games that were $80, if not more, through the run of the 16-bit consoles, right? And then CD technology came along and saved us from all of that by giving us load times instead of big cartridge sizes. And so again, not entirely, not entirely off base with, a Starflight for $80 is, well, that's a different offering than Strider for $80, I'll say. But I think getting out there and giving the single game equivalent of, we have a product for those of you who don't have this money. It's called it, or like, what? Don't you guys have phones? Like this belongs in that pantheon of like quotes that you didn't need to say this. Like if you had asked a single person that you work with, like, hey, should I tell this fucker that if you're a real fan that you'll find a way to make it happen? I feel like anyone in your orbit would have said like, Randy, no. What? No. Or maybe not. Maybe he is surrounded by people who are like, yeah, tell that fucker. I don't know, man. But I feel like if he had gone to 2K, who now owns his studio, and been like, hey, I'm thinking about saying this, they would have been like, what? No, what? No. Why would you? No. How about instead you don't? How about you don't post? How about you just don't post it? Could you just not post anything? Could you just stop doing, I think, and whatever. We don't want to. We have already spent too much time on this, but I think that again, anyone who ever says like anything about games and tries to justify it, as, oh, you're not a real fan. Are you? If you're a real fan, you'll put up with getting fucked over by this major public corporation. Like, you didn't. You did not need to do this. You did not need to wade into this. Someone needs to be near him to say, dude, don't. Like, someone needs to be around him to say, fucking stop, dude. Just stop. And the response to that was exactly what you thought it would be. It's avoidable. Meanwhile, Neil Druckmann's working on another game. This comes to us from videogameschronicle.com, who took the time to listen to and or read the transcript of the Press X to Continue podcast, where he did say, like, yeah, they're working on at least 2 projects, and that there is an unannounced game that he is working on alongside Intergalactic. And he talks about a bit of the back and forth on that. Naughty Dog is traditionally, from the sounds of things, not really been amazing at being a multi-game studio. They've done it a few times over their run, but I think when you pick apart some of the quotes from that era over time, it's a lot of like, oh, the resources get jerked back and forth between projects because one needs it here and one need, and trying to figure all of that stuff out is sometimes tricky, but. No indication as to what this project would be. I would assume it's a Last of Us sequel. I feel like Intergalactic is probably the, hey, okay, yeah, you guys should make something different. You guys should try to make something new. You guys have really knocked it out of the park for us for a good long time. Let's not strap you to these franchises forever. Try to make something else. And my guess is that, if you've got him on a second project, it almost certainly has to be a Last of Us sequel or follow-up or something to that effect, right? I mean, they're going to keep making that television show at least for, a couple more seasons. And so with that thing as hot as it is, it would be dumb not to make another Last of Us game, at least from a business point of view. But with the amount of time it would take to actually make that game, at this point, like, that seems kind of weird. Because, by the time Intergalactic comes out, and then they're still, in this kind of early stages on whatever this unannounced thing is. But I have to imagine that if you were going to get another game out of them next, it would have to be The Last of Us. Would have to be. Maybe these re-releases and remasters and all this other stuff will kind of give them a leg up on the tech side of things and help them kind of like, get up and running a little faster than they would have if they were just starting from scratch. But either way, yeah. I mean, either way, New Last of Us probably doesn't come out until after the television show is completely wrapped up, right? We'll see. Yeah, I don't know. People seem mad about Last of Us now. I don't know what happened. Speaking of being mad about things, Australia. The ratings board in Australia, according to a screenshot of said ratings, this was picked up by Gamatsu and a handful of other places. The Australian ratings board over at classification.gov.au has assigned a G rating to a game from Microids and Eden Games called Garfield Kart 2 All You Can Drift. So strap yourselves in for that terrifying future where a Garfield kart racing game is going to be coming your way at some point. Yes, if you are a real fan of Garfield, you'll find a way to afford Garfield Kart 2. It's going to be $90. Language, no dialogue. It says here it has no dialogue. Which you're not even going to get Garfield to say. Maybe that just means it doesn't. Yeah, published by Microids, developed by Eden Games. No release date associated with this. These ratings listings never go that far, but it does say language, no dialogue. I wonder if that means zero speech at all. That would be like that. I mean, I'm sure it's a budget game, but that would be some budget game if they're just like, no, we didn't even make Garfield talk. We said, fuck it. He doesn't need to talk. Speaking of Sony's forays into live service gaming and things of that nature, Jade Raymond has left the studio Haven, which is the studio responsible for Fairgames. Eurogamer is reporting that this is also going to be alongside I guess this originally is from Bloomberg. But that there is a delay of the game associated with some of this, and that it has perhaps been delayed into next year, though that has not been fully confirmed. But they just haven't shown any of it, right? And so now you have the founder of the studio moving on, and what does that mean for the future of Fairgames, which apparently Bloomberg also discovered that they have taken the $ out of the title and is now just a regular S, which is A, the right move, B, removes the one distinguishing characteristic that game had at all. So I don't know. I don't know what the long-term ramifications of that will end up being. Jade Raymond has been, has had an interesting career. She was the face of Assassin's Creed when that game first, when that franchise first launched back in 2007, and was there for a good long run, and then kind of bounced around a little bit after 2014 or so. Ended up at EA for a while, ended up at Stadia for a while, and was kind of working on the management side of Stadia and working with a number of studios there, and then got out and started this Haven studio. But it's kind of been a long time since Jade Raymond worked on something and shipped something directly. It's been a lot of credits around like, oh, you were the VP of this, and you were special thanks to you for your work on this, and all of those things. So it must just be frustrating to have that happen, just from a career, just like these the shipping games is the satisfying part of it, right? Like you go bananas working on a thing for years and years and years, and then it comes out and you're like, yeah, we finished the thing, it's shipped, we're so it's been a bit. Maybe she was the general manager of the SVP group, whatever that is, on Star Wars Battlefront 2. And so is that the last thing that she was... Is that the last thing she was credited on that's not like a special thanks or like a, hey, you were part of the Stadia team or, or whatever. But yeah, we'll see what she does next, and we'll see what happens with Fairgames. Fairgames, I feel like, when all the Conquered stuff happened and just Sony's weird, bumbling is not the word, I guess, but like, but Sony's attempts to try to like get this kind of like live service game thing up and running across the board has just been a strange. It's why I talk about it in terms like, hey, all we really know is that at one point they said they wanted to make 12 of these things, and that now was a long time ago, and that they have changed leadership, and who knows what their current appetite for this stuff is, and what is going to be the path forward for all of this, and like what is going to happen there. And so, they've probably spent a lot of money funding games like Fairgames and some of these other games that they have running. They spent a lot of money on Bungie. Obviously, they spent a lot of money buying the studio that developed Conquered. And then, Sony's just in this weird patch where they have not shipped a lot this year. Obviously, Ghost of Yotei is coming up, and, they do have a few things for the fall, but like that, they've had a very strange year across the board. And I don't know how much of it you could tether to some of these live service games' dreams, and then also those games needing to get pushed back and them not necessarily fully understanding or, like fully committing to making these games or understanding what it takes, like whatever the situation is. Like, it just hasn't seemed like a good fit. Sony has not seemed like a studio that fully gets it when it comes to the live service stuff, or they've just been dealt a bad hand and they made a lot of bad choices when it came to acquiring studios and when they acquired them and all this other stuff. So and it's a weird time for them. Fortnite is in the news, as they are every couple weeks or so. So there was the lawsuit with Epic and Apple. Apple was compelled to open up their storefront or open up their policies for payment processing. In a way, in the US, this had already kind of been litigated in the EU. But in the US now, if you are putting an app in the Apple App Store, you can take credit card payments yourself. You can do, you can not use the Apple processing system if you don't want to. And so now Spotify is selling audiobooks directly in the app itself, and things that Apple had previously not allowed are starting to happen. And so Epic's resubmitted to Fortnite, and they said, okay, we want to ship this thing worldwide, and we want to put it out in the US now that we don't have to allow Apple to take its 30%. We're ready to go. And so Apple just kind of didn't get back to them for a good long time, and then apparently blocked the release of it in the US. Because if you remember, when all of this stuff happened originally, Epic's developer account with Apple was basically canceled. They shut it down. And there was a lot of worry at the time, like, what does this mean for Unreal Engine on phones? Because a lot of other developers were busy working on that. They said, no, we're not taking steps against Unreal Engine on phones. We are merely saying that Epic cannot put things out on the App Store anymore in the US. And so when all this EU stuff happened, Epic set up a separate company. In a different country. And I don't have, I had that in front of me at one point, and now I do not. But basically, like, there was another arm of Epic somewhere else in the world that was handling Fortnite getting onto iOS. And this was happening in the EU, and everything was fine. It was Epic, and then whatever. I'll say it was Epic Cyprus, but no, I don't think they were in Cyprus. Wherever they were. Anyway, they were not hiding that it was Epic. It's not nothing dumb like that. But that company then submitted, it might have been Sweden. Yeah, it may have been Epic Sweden. Yeah. I think people in chat are saying it's Sweden. Anyway. So they submitted a updated Fortnite and said, here it is. Now it can be available worldwide. And so Epic Sweden or whatever, like, they submitted this. And Apple said, no, you can resubmit it without the US stuff and we will definitely approve it. But like, this is not, no. Remember, that developer account got canceled. Has been the thing that they have kind of pointed to now as like why they're doing this and so on. I think that's shitty. I think that's, whatever. Are they within their rights to do that? That is something that the courts will probably eventually have to decide. if Apple is forced to do business with Epic in this situation or not. I don't know. However, on the Epic side of things, instead of resubmitting without the US thing, they have instead shut the game down worldwide on iOS. And Epic is throwing up their hands and going like, Apple shut down the game around the world. Look at what Apple did. Oh no, Superboy has jumped. What are we going to do? And they are trying to leverage the public yet again to not like Apple because Apple took their Fortnite away. Except they fucking didn't. Epic took your Fortnite away as an attempt to try to leverage this stuff in a very transparent and scummy way that I think is like, no one, like, who is fooled by this? Anyone who reads about this for like 5 minutes goes like, oh yeah, this is just Epic trying to apply leverage and this is stupid. This is like a dumb way to do this. So, because they submit like weekly updates and those updates need to be in sync across all platforms for it to work, then, you know, obviously Fortnite is now offline around the world. And so, yeah, they're getting on social media and trying to be like, oh, it's so sad that Apple has done this to you. Poor Fortnite players. Like, we can't believe it. Like, no, you are fully within your rights to go fully outside of Apple's storefront in the EU. Like, there's nothing stopping Epic from doing this. And Apple has said that if it was submitted without that US part of it, that the rest of the world would be operating as it has for some chunk of time now. We'll see. I don't know. But there's a letter sent to Epic Games Sweden. Or I guess maybe this was sent to the courts because it's been issued publicly, basically saying, when the hotfix was triggered in August 2020, Apple removed Fortnite from the US storefront of the App Store and subsequently terminated the developer program membership of Epic Games Incorporated. After that termination, Epic Games stipulated that if it had breached its developer program license agreement with Apple and acknowledged that if its defenses to the enforceability were not successful, and Apple would be entitled to a declaration that Apple's termination would be lawful and valid and enforceable. Apple has the contractual right to terminate the developer program licensing agreement with any or all of Epic's wholly owned subsidiaries, affiliates, and or other entities under Epic's control at any time at our sole discretion. And that Apple's point of view is that they are not going to revisit that decision until, let's see here. Apple will not revisit that decision until after the U.S. litigation between the parties conclude. In our review, the same reasoning extends to returning Fortnite to the U.S. storefront of the App Store, regardless of which Epic-related entity submits the app. And so, because there's still appeals and all this other ongoing bullshit, Apple views the matter as not finished, and so they're just like, nope. I don't know if this will work or not, but I do think that Epic pulling the plug on it around the world and trying to be like, oh, poor us. Oh, the children. Won't you think of the children? They want to make Darth Vader say curse words. The children need to make Darth Vader say slurs. And Apple is stopping you. I think that's a really gross way for them to go. But this whole process has been, it's you should want to feel good about, you should be like, oh man, it's nice that game developers are taking it to Apple and chipping away at some of the bullshit that Apple has done in building its storefront. Like they're right. This is too much. They have too much control. They're taking too much of a cut, whatever. Like, you should be able to have an alternative. Like, ultimately this is a good thing, but man, it's like every step of the way Epic has to do something that makes you go like, I still agree with Epic, but I don't feel good about it. Jesus Christ. So we'll see where it all goes. Meanwhile, yes, SAG-AFTRA is not happy with Epic as a result of the Darth Vader AI voice that they put into the game. I guess you find Darth Vader in Fortnite and you can voice chat with him, and it is an LLM of some kind, and so it will respond to you in like the dumb fucking meaningless way that all LLMs talk to you. And they have used James Earl Jones' voice for this. They have cloned his voice and apparently did this with permission from his family. Which, okay, I think that's a little gross, but they did it with permission of the family, and so, it's like, okay, well, if everyone is in agreement on that aspect of it, I guess I can't be mad at that specific aspect of it. SAG-AFTRA, however, is not happy. They are arguing, according to VideoGamesChronicle.com, that this takes work away from the other actors who could have voiced the character in his video game form. Obviously, James Earl Jones has not been every Darth Vader voice. Over time, they have certainly gone with sound-alikes and paid other people to do the work. To which I would say, in this specific situation, like they're not making something that you could replace with a human voice. Like it is still an AI thing. They are still making a garbage AI thing. Even if it's not James Earl Jones's voice, it would still have to be someone's voice for a voice clone. And so SAG-AFTRA's quote is, "We celebrate the right of our members and their estates to control the use of their digital replicas and welcome the use of new technologies to allow new generations to share in the enjoyment of those legacies and renowned roles. However, we must protect our right to bargain terms and conditions around the uses of voice that replace the work of our members, including those who previously did the work of matching Darth Vader's iconic rhythm and tone in video games." And they accuse Epic, they accuse Fortnite of replacing the work of human performers with AI technology. And unfortunately, they did so without providing any notice of their intent to do so and without bargaining with us over appropriate terms. As such, we have filed an unfair labor practice charge with the NLRB. It's tricky, man. James Earl Jones was almost certainly at one point a member of SAG-AFTRA, but now he has passed away, and so I guess he's not covered. He's not cool anymore now that he's dead. But if he had been alive, you would have been like, yeah, thumbs up, soldier. This is fucking great. Like, I think that sucks too. I think the whole thing fucking sucks. And that said, so the implementation here is that when you're playing Fortnite, you can find Darth Vader and you can talk to him over voice chat like he was a human player, and he will respond to you. And so the internet is now full of clips of people tricking AI Darth Vader into saying a bunch of slurs, and asking him questions about the Taco Bell value menu. And it's like, it's like, the Sith, I don't waste my time worrying about the quantity of food in the Taco Bell value menu. Like, whatever. It's stupid. Like, it's fucking dumb. It's not like cool. It's like, hey, look at this garbage ass fucking AI implementation that's fucking stupid and shitty, like all of this other stuff. Like, this isn't good. Like, there's no part of it that's like good. You're like, oh, it's cool, man. It's like Darth Vader was there with us. It's like, no, stupid. It's like a Darth Vader computer that has been fucking programmed to say the same fucking 40 things, and when you try to deviate from that, he tries to, go like, I don't understand why our mission is about this Mountain Dew. It's just like, it comes off like Eliza, the original fucking fake AI fucking thing from the 70s, where you would say things and it would prod a fucking response based on the words you were typing. But Eliza was, that was fucking 40 years ago, 50 years ago even. You're just like, okay, yeah, this is stupid. This is not much better than that in the grand scheme of things. You expect him to say, come, elucidate your thoughts, the same way that Eliza always would. Except this one says a bunch of fucking slurs and racist shit and all this other stuff because, hey, it's the internet. It's the modern internet. Good luck. Good going, stupid. Good work on everyone involved. So what a great way to honor the legacy of James Earl Jones and his iconic work as the iconic character Darth Vader, than to expose it all to this fucking horse shit. You dummies. So yeah, I think SAG-AFTRA has a point that I think SAG-AFTRA, should be defending its members against the use of AI and all this other stuff. I do think that in this one weird case, it is like, I look at it and go like, yeah, I don't, because it's not like they would ever get real humans. What are they getting? Are they going to employ 1 million Darth Vader impersonators so that every time you encounter Darth Vader in game, it's a real person talking to you as Darth Vader, and they have to just make it up on the fly? That'd be better. I mean, like you couldn't, I don't think you could get away with do that, but that's, that's not reasonable. Also, I would say they shouldn't have done this thing in the first place. Not necessarily for those reasons, not necessarily for the union reasons, but because I think this thing is shitty and gross. And it's shitty. And on top of that, it's shitty. And on top of that, it's bad. Because it's just another fucking LLM that someone has been like, hey, pretend that you're Darth Vader. And, written some fucking prompt to get this thing to respond like it was fucking Darth Vader. And just been like, the concerns of the Sith have nothing to do with this gayness that you keep talking about. Whatever. How would it help our mission if you were to lick my butthole? Like, whatever, man. Like, it's just, you just go like, this is fucking dumb. I think on that front, I think like it is a fucking bad experience the way that chatting to any LLM eventually is. And so the him, giving the right, his family with the rights to the voice, like as long as that really is all on the up and up, I don't necessarily have a huge problem with that aspect of it. It really is just, this thing's fucking garbage. This thing's fucking garbage. Go look at the clips. It's fucking garbage, dude. Like you don't know. The only fun thing about fucking AI, about these large language models, is making it say shit it's not supposed to say. It's not like, oh, this was really useful and entertaining. This made my experience more enriched. It was like I was right alongside Darth Vader. It's like, no, I was right alongside a computer that we could prod and poke at to go like, can we make it fuck up here? How can we break it? Can we break it here? Can we break it here? How is that? It just seems like a fucking insane thing to try to do. At this stage, it's just like, why would you do this? Anyway, that's the news. Yuck. Let's see here. Why don't we get into some emails here? podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Send in your emails and I will check them out. Let's start with this one from Brian. Very topical. Every time I see Randy Pitchford on stage talking about Borderlands 4, it's so cringy, I want to rip my own skin off. At the Game Awards where he said, "This is the moment," when it was most certainly not the moment, I looked away in embarrassment. His involvement and presence make me want to actively avoid the game. Do you think his presence and presentation hurts the game, or does it only bother people like me who are aware of him and his persistent weirdness? I can't imagine his presentations affect bottom line sales that much, but they make me want to hide in a hole until he stops talking. Does this only affect people who pay attention to this stuff way too much? Do you think his involvement will have any real impact on the sales of Borderlands 4 at the end of the day? Thanks for everything. I'm quitting this shitty prison job tomorrow because I got a new gig and I will no longer have to send emails from jail. Yeah, I don't know. I'll miss the jail emails, Brian. So yeah, I think that Randy Pitchford does have an impact on the product insofar as that, like if you Talked to him about Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Like there's whole aspects of that game that I think he was very hands-on with, and so I assume that he has a hands-on. I assume he has his hands on portions of all of these games, right? And so I think he does have a direct impact on the quality of those games and what have you. That said, do I think that him on social media, do I think that him, giving these presentations or whatever that you don't like, do I think that has a massive impact on the game itself? No, I don't. I think the game is the game. And I think that like him acting the way he does, I think only helps kind of reinforce the things that you kind of don't like about that game, because you see him out there and you go like, oh, is this why Borderlands 3 is the way that it is? Is it because he probably thinks it's really funny? I don't know the answer to that, but but I think that that's probably the only real connection that people have. Again, I will say, from talking to people who have interacted with Randy Pitchford, not necessarily worked for him. I think people who have worked for him have maybe a slightly different perspective on him, depending on where they were at and when. But people who have worked with him, at other companies, and interacted with him and all of that stuff, have not had anything unkind to say about him on a personal level. For whatever that's worth, I don't know anyone. I know very few people who think he on a personal level is a bad person or whatever. Especially when all of this stuff was coming up, like his former business partners and some of the people that were saying a lot of really crazy stuff about Randy, what he was into. That seems to, like that stuff. I don't think that stuff like went away. I think that stuff was unfounded and kind of vanished on a lot of that, stuff. For whatever that's worth, I don't know, man. I mean, I kind of agree with you. He's enthusiastic, and I think that is a blessing and a curse. And I think that Randy Pitchford is just maybe kind of a weird dude. And I think that doesn't work for some people. And I think, especially now that they have sold the studio to 2K and everything, when they were at Embracer, no one was going to rein him in or do anything. But I do think that, like, just from a pure PR standpoint, I remember hearing, when they were not owned, when Gearbox was not owned by 2K, you remember hearing some stories about like, oh man, like we're doing PR for Borderlands 2 or 3 or whatever. And like, he's going to say some stuff and he demands to do the PAX panels. And, so a lot of it, I wish we could just, not have him be a part of this PR cycle. But we don't own the studio and we don't own it all outright. So we can't make those suggestions. But now 2K actually does own it. So, there is, I think, an opportunity for 2K to step in and be like, hey, don't do this. Like, stop. And stuff like this, stuff like him getting out there and trying to say real fans will pay whatever price. I think that's a good case for 2K to get out there and say like, hey, this is amateur hour bullshit. Like, don't fucking do this. Like, stop this. There's a nicer way to say it than I just said it there. But I do think that there probably has to be some kind of stuff there. Then you get into, yes, the bonuses around Borderlands 3 in that situation. That was gross. I think that, obviously also Randy Pitchford went off and made movie for a while. And so under Embracer, Gearbox, I think went some really weird directions. Some of that you could probably put on him, some of it maybe not, but I don't know I can't really pick all of that stuff apart, at this point. So, it's a weird thing, man. The whole, like, what is his actual crime? There's the stuff, people who have worked for him have had some pretty nasty stories. But nothing, nothing that crazy. For some people, it was the aliens stuff. For some stuff, it was like, oh, they made all those promises about aliens, colonial marines, and And then, you know, the word got out that they had siphoned money away from that project and put it into something else. For some stuff, it was he had the USB drive full of squirt videos. Which some people are saying underage stuff, but I don't remember there being any talk about that stuff being underage material at the time. But I don't know that one way or the other. But, you know, then him going on a podcast and talking about squirt videos. Hey, what's wrong? What's wrong with that? Randy Pitchford getting on a magician's podcast and talking about squirt videos. What? Is he to be held to some higher standard than everyone else on the internet talking about fucking whatever they want? Like, it's a coarse world. We talk about stuff that maybe 20 years ago we didn't. And so, like, you know, are you going to, I like that aspect of it. Being like that part of it, I can't really like get to like whatever about, you know, like assuming again that was all on the up and up, because again, you know, it's not like he got arrested or, you know, like nothing came of that from a age perspective or whatever. But so yeah, I don't really care about I can't really care about that specific aspect of it. Like, you know, is he into some porno? Okay, sure. Isn't everyone into some porno? Everyone's into something. I don't care. Like, I've seen a lot of squirt videos in my day. It doesn't really do, you know, personally, it doesn't really do anything for me. It's just like, oh, okay. But yes, some of the stuff, employees and working for him directly, like, yeah, there's been some stories over the years there of, you know, ways that he's treated situations and stuff there that are not great. But again, you know, to that I would say, like, look at the industry he works in, and, you know, look at some of the other CEOs and some of the other people that have, you know, done a lot of that stuff. They're like, hey, you know, like, are you going to single him out for this when some of these practices have been widespread and stuff is getting better, and it's stuff that I don't think he would get away with now, especially now that they're owned by 2K. I am not saying he is like a great, you know, anyway, whatever. You know, I think that's, but at the end of the day, I think the answer to your question is, I don't think that any of this really has a major impact on the sales of Borderlands games. To me, the thing that impacts the sale of Borderlands games and all of that stuff is the quality of the games themselves. And I think the quality of the writing in those games has been poor. And you could make the argument that, like, hey, I don't think that Randy Pitchford has a particularly great sense of humor based on the things I've seen him do over the years, plus the writing in the games that his company has made. I can look at that and be like, yeah, I don't like that. I can kind of sign up for and be like, yeah, I don't know how much of that is him and how much of that is the people that are writing and whatever. But like at the end of the day, yeah. I don't know, man. I don't like talking about Randy Pitchford to in great extents, because it's tiring. It's tiring. But I think that's the risky run. Like the you know, the way that game always was it was the, like, check out this badass thing. Here's some badass stuff for badasses, and you're gonna fuck shit up, and we're gonna curse and stuff. And when that first game came out, a lot of that was still kind of quaint. And now we live in a world where anyone can get on a podcast and talk about squirt videos. So, like, your funny jokes about the nature of the internet are tame. I say you just put that stuff in the game. Put that stuff in the game. Brennan from Cambridge says, every time I search up a wrestler on Wikipedia, recently, for example, I looked up Randy Orton and Edge, who's from my hometown. It always calls them one of the greatest pro wrestlers of all time. Like, is every wrestler one of the greatest? Granted, I don't know much about wrestling other than the nonsense you talk about, so maybe I'm just looking up the most well-known wrestlers by default. I guess I have two answers here. One, I would say if you're looking up Randy Orton and Edge, I think you could make cases that both of them are the greatest wrestlers, some of the greatest wrestlers of all time. They have both had very illustrious careers, Hall of Fame worthy, regardless of who owns the Hall of Fame. The other thing I would say is, there are a lot of wrestlers that you could say that about. I think that, there are, if you look at the number of wrestlers who are working on a regular basis today, and I mean that around the world, people that are wrestling for the smallest indie promotions up through the kind of mid-tiers, all the way to being on television every week. There are a lot of people practicing the art of professional wrestling. I think that if you are a person who has ascended to a point where you're on television on a regular basis doing that, and you're doing it well at all, you are probably one of the greatest pro wrestlers of all time. Like the number of people doing it. Like I wouldn't necessarily, I'm not going to sit here and say every single person on the WWE roster is one of the greatest pro wrestlers of all time. But I think that people who, have established themselves and had good runs and whatever else, there's a bunch of metrics that you could try to use here. Scissors asks, does that make The Miz one of the greatest? Absolutely. The Miz is one of the greatest pro wrestlers of all time. 100%. Like, look at the run he has had. He didn't always win titles, but he has always gotten reactions from the crowd. His work in the ring is, at worst, it is fine. But he is quite good at doing what he does. He is good at getting other people over, if we would use the phrase. I have no I think The Miz is severely underrated because he has been a bad guy a lot of the time, and he has been kind of out of the world title picture or whatever, but like, he is a guy who is fucking there, man. He is a guy who is gonna show up. He is a very reliable person. He is more than just a good hand, and he has been part of some like really good things over the years. You go like, man, I look at The Miz and say like they could get a lot more out of him than they do. Personally, I think there's a lot of stuff that he's capable of that I think that he could, I mean, I would rather see him in any of these storylines over someone like a Logan Paul, for example. And so, yeah, dude, I absolutely, by just about any metric, I think you have to look at The Miz and say he is one of the greatest pro wrestlers of all time. For the, just for how long he's been doing it and how well he does it at the level he does it. Like, you can send that guy anywhere in the world. He can go out there, he can fucking do media, he can do interviews, he can do all this. Like, he feels like a guy who has been at least very good to great at just about every aspect of that business. And I think that like that has to count for something. That has to count for a lot, in my view. So yeah, dude, like people shit on that guy a lot, and I think that's crazy. I think it's just crazy when you look at the number of years he's been doing this stuff and everything that he has done, and some of the fucking garbage he has been written into, and has still managed to make it like at least sort of work some of the time. You're like, man, yeah, like he's a fucking reliable, fucking steady fucking guy, man. And that's so that I think like stuff like that is why I think, yeah, there are a lot of people that you could say he's one of the greatest pro wrestlers of all time, because there are, only so many spots on television. And the people that have managed to maintain one of those spots for more than 6 months, I think you got to look at them and go like, hey, yeah, I mean, you know, if we're just saying one of the greatest pro wrestlers of all time, it's a big list. It's a big list. But, you know, I think he's doing everything that's been asked of him and then some. So I can't really, you know, I think it would be silly to not include him in that conversation. Mason writes in from Virginia and says, with all the news that Bungie has low morale and that Marathon will have to be a top 5 seller of all games this year to be seen as a success, I ask the question, why not make a new single-player game? Bungie has made great single-player campaigns like the original Marathon trilogy and the Halo series, and why don't you try something new after Destiny 2 is kind of falling off? Is it just the old saying that people don't want to make some money, they want to make all the money? Well, so I would say a few things here. One, how many of the people that are currently at Bungie had a hand in those great single-player campaigns that you're talking about? Like, how much of how many of those people are still with the company? That's not. I don't mean to say that like the current, the current staff of Bungie is not talented or whatever. Like, that's not. I'm not trying to like shit on them. What I'm trying to say is like, this is something that comes up all the time. And they're just like, why isn't BioWare making a great BioWare game? Why isn't this team doing this? And why isn't this? It's like, all those people are fucking gone, dude. The people that made those games 20 years, like, not everyone's like Nintendo. It's not like Miyamoto was still sitting there flipping over tables and was fucking Mario time. You know, like, it's not like that, man. People fucking move on. There are plenty of studios that still have the same name on the door, but it's all totally different people. And you just go like, oh, this is the new thing. Is it as good? No, but I don't know. They're still doing it. Okay, great. Nice work. And so I think that that's something you have to remember. When you say, why don't they make the games the way that they used to make the games? It's because a lot of those people have been gone for a long time. The other part of this is, they're owned by a company that, as we know, went out publicly and said, we want to make 12 live service games. So they work for a company where that's the appetite. The appetite is for that sort of thing. And so they're going to try to make that sort of thing. They're going to keep making that sort of thing. They probably got acquired because they had expertise in making that sort of thing. Do they still have that expertise, or have those people moved on too? You know, at the end of the day, I think that there's a lot of stuff like that, you know, where you go like, oh, well, Bungie made Destiny 2. It's like, yeah, and I love Destiny 2. Sort of. For some of its run. For a significant chunk of its run, it was one of the greatest games out. And at times, it was one of the most frustrating games out. And sometimes they would pull it back one way or the other. And, as the different updates would hit, you'd be like, oh man, this thing sucks. You're like, oh no, it's back now. And you're like, eh. And so, even something like Destiny 2, I think has really had a rocky run. And these days, it doesn't seem like people are not focused on Destiny 2 the same way they used to, which makes sense. It's a decade old. People move on and do other things, whether that's making the games or playing them, And so, yeah, I think going back and going, why doesn't Bungie just make a game like the original Marathon trilogy? Like, who there is going to have the actual expertise in making that sort of thing anymore? Or are they just going to play it a lot and go like, I think we can make something like this, and maybe it'll be great, maybe it won't, but there's nothing guaranteed about that. But also, again, the appetite for a single player game in this environment is not the same as it used to be. I'll be curious to see how Doom does. Doom is kind of an interesting situation because obviously it's on Game Pass, and so that kind of, a lot of people will play that game that do not pay, any money for it. and we'll see where that all nets out. But but that is a single player game. I think it's a very good one at that. But you know, even that game has a bunch of skins and stuff. Like the NVIDIA app is like, click here and link this and you can get a skin for your game. And you're like, oh, okay. It's a first person game. Why am I getting skins for my character? All right, well, whatever. So there's that aspect of it. I just don't think that the interest, I don't think that there's interest in the business right now for like a really good quality single player game. Unless you are spending so much money making it that it is a big Sony marquee fucking, you know, sad dad doing things, or Spider-Man, or both. Could we make Spider-Man a sad father? Could we find a way to, you know, and you know, that type of prestige gaming thing that Sony is kind of, I mean, you know, I don't want to say corner the market on it, but like they're the only ones that seem to be able to afford those budgets. That said, they have not been churning them out that much lately. So yeah, I do think that, you know, it's just, it's the appetite is not necessarily there for a single player game in that capacity, especially at full price. And so you start to go down this road of like, okay, well, can we make a $40 thing that we sell skins for and make it a multiplayer thing and we support it for 5 years? Can we maintain this number of players for this length of time? And, you know, you start to look at bets like that. Like, okay, if we make this game like this, it'll retain like this, it'll monetize like this. And you make that pitch. And you go that direction instead. And so I don't know, like I don't, it's not as simple as like, why don't they just make a single player game? Because the money and the budgeting and everything is so completely different for that. When you're making a single player game, you're going to work on it for X number of years. You're going to support it with like 1 DLC, maybe 2. Maybe like Doom or something, you try to figure out a way to put some cosmetics in it, though they're not selling those. It's always like, it's like marketing deals. It's like, you know, a thing with NVIDIA or whatever. And so you're, you know, there's probably some money changing hands around that aspect of it one way or the other. And then you ship it and you support it for X number of months or years to get your DLC out and to patch it up so it runs the way it needs to run. And then you go make something else. It's either a sequel to that thing or you go make another game. If your live service game hits, well, then it's making what, 10 times the money? I don't know. Like, what's the actual dollar difference? Like, it's making, if it really hits, it's making way more money than it would have if you were just a one and done purchase. And so that's why the gamble is there, you know? There are certainly some exceptions. Yeah, Borderlands has been a good exception. Borderlands is a game that I think you could see the hooks for putting live service stuff into Borderlands 4. Instead, they just went a different route with it, and they sold a lot of... Hey, after you stopped playing Borderlands 2, they kept releasing shit for it, by the way. If you go look at the Steam page for Borderlands 2, let me load this up. They started selling like inventory slot upgrades and like all kind, like skins and whatever. Like there was a ton. And they did all of this kind of like, you know, they did their story-based DLC and whatever, but then they also just did, well, they've since consolidated. So it's just 5 things in the Steam store these days. But I remember this being a massive list at one point where it was like, here's an upgrade. It's going to add this, like, it's going to add this little quest thing here. And then also by buying this, you're going to get some skins. And also by buying this, you're going to get the ability to respec or, you know, whatever it is. So right now they have, like, for 99 cents, you can get the Gunzerker Madness pack. And this gives you an El Diablo head and a Mess with the Bull skin for the Gunzerker. This content is not included in Season Pass. Yeah. Ultimate Vault Hunter Upgrade Pack 2. I think this is what I'm thinking about. The Ultimate Vault Hunter Upgrade Pack 2 Digistruct Peak Challenge adds 11 more levels of character growth, new legendary gear, and the challenging Raid on Digistruct Peak map, offering even more high-level play. If you want to get even more out of your Borderlands experience, the first Ultimate Upgrade Pack and Ultimate Upgrade Pack 2 can be combined for a max level cap of 72. Even more legendary gear and new over-leveled modes. So they literally sold level cap upgrades for Borderlands 2. Like they went a long ways on that thing. And so it's stuff that you look at and go like, okay, yeah, I mean, for a game that was made the way Borderlands 2 was made and did as well as it did and still had all those people playing, like it makes sense for them to try to get more money out of those people. You could argue that if Borderlands was a live service game that had a regular cadence of updates and cosmetics and all of this other stuff, that in some ways that might be a more efficient way to extract money out of people post-release. So I look at it as like, they're not that different. You know, at the end of the day, I think the main difference that you see is like, well, Borderlands, you finish it and they will eventually stop making shit for it, I guess. And you can play it without a full connection to a server, whereas most live service games don't allow that. And so that's a convenience that you get that way for sure. What are they selling for? I don't think they went on to do nearly as much for Borderlands 3. I could be wrong. Yeah, it's Season Pass and Season Pass 2 for Borderlands 3. They simplified it. And if you want to buy Borderlands 3 and both of those, okay, no, this is just, oh man, okay. So Borderlands is full price right now. It's $60. If you want the Super Deluxe Edition, which is Borderlands 3, the Digital Deluxe Extras, and the first Season Pass, that is $80. That does not include the second Season Pass, which is another $30. So, like, Borderlands 3 is still quite a chunk of money if you were to buy it right now. To which I would say, you don't need to do that. Real fans have played it already, of course. Oh, God. So, I don't know. Like, I think you have some anomalies and things like that with something like Borderlands that is not a live service game that ends up, doing quite well and sells quite well. They've established a fan base. And so they can kind of afford to get away with it and not be a live service game, which is funny because I look at it and go like, there's probably a case to be made for like, if this was a live service game, you could probably do some interesting stuff with it for 5 years. In terms of what you add to the game and whatever else out. But yeah, I think why not make a single player game? It's never as easy as that. To actually answer your question, Mason, in Virginia, there are a lot of reasons why studios just don't go make a single player game. And it's because I think a lot of the player base has moved on and they want more out of their games. I think that there's also, and maybe some of this is a bit of a generational divide. But I think obviously, you look at the big successful games over the last 5 or 10 years, the majority of those have had things like regular updates and plenty of opportunities to buy things post-release. Like, they're still saying that GTA 5 is still somehow selling like millions of copies every 3 months. Like every quarter they report and it's just like, oh, we sold X number, like, another 5 million copies of GTA 5. Like people are still getting into that thing and then playing the GTA online stuff and then buying shark cards and cars and whatever else they want to buy. They're monetizing. Otherwise they wouldn't keep doing updates for it. Yes, they do these fun bundles along the way, of course. But then you have, Among Us, like not a live service game per se, but a very social experience, a very online, very focused and very social experience. You have Fortnite, obviously, is a game meant to be enjoyed in groups with your friends, and so when you look at all of these games that have broken through and become these gigantic mainstream hits, your Robloxes and what have you, you look at that trend, you look at the demographics and the ages of the people that are playing them, and you go like, oh yeah, maybe we should go in this direction. As games get more and more expensive, we keep talking about these $80 games, but like Fortnite is still $0. And you might not like Fortnite. I don't especially like Fortnite, but a lot of people do. And a lot of people want to keep playing it. And a lot of people get with their friends and they do their thing and they go and they play it. And so I think that there is plenty of room in the world for the live service game, the free to play game, whatever it is. Is that purely safe and great? No, of course, no. Roblox is a fucking scary. When it comes to kids and safety and all of that stuff. But like, it's hard to look at that and then say like, why aren't these developers making more single player games? It's because the people that are playing games don't want that and they don't have $80 to spend on it anyway. And so instead they're like, oh, can we chip away half a percentage point of Fortnite for this long a time to make our money, And I think that's a losing proposition in a lot of cases too. But I see why people would take one bet over the other. I think there are cases to be made for either one. And it's I don't know, like all of those things don't seem like a great outcome, but that's just kind of where this stuff is at right now. Carson from Baltimore wants to know, could games ever have film festivals? This week and the next few is the Cannes Film Festival. To summarize, it's one of the more prestigious film festivals where a lot of films premiere and get picked up by distributors. Lower budget, more indie stuff mostly. Films from directors never heard of, or others that have made some bangers. Critics and juries vote on awards and give them out. It's where movies like Parasite, Anora, Anatomy of a Fall, etc. in recent years had their premiere. It made me think, why can't video games have something like this? Most games conventions like E3, PAX, or Gamescom basically come off as giant ads. Besides PAX, not really much promoting creators or the art itself. So I do think that this exists. I think it's the IGF. I think it's the Independent Games Festival that's part of GDC. Or something like Bit Summit. But the IGF, I think, is, if you're talking about things that are indie, from unknowns, from all of that need to be picked up, that are like, oh man, what if we got a publisher? What if we got this? Though that's sometimes doesn't make as much sense as it used to in video games, but it's the IGF. The IGF does this every year as part of GDC, where a ton of indie games are shown and awards are given out, and there are people who vote for that spend a long time to help pick those games. And when you were a judge for the IGF, it is like they don't hand you every single game that's up for it. They go like, okay, you're going to be working on this category and this category. Here's like a ton of games, and you're not even going to see this other stuff over here. And those judges and they talk and they go like, hey, you really need, if you haven't checked this out, you really need to, and you need to, they'll kind of help try to point you like as part of that process as they go through and try to figure out what to pick. And a lot of those games haven't been released yet. Not all of them, but there are games in the IGF that are not done and out. And some of them might not be done and out for years. And so that's kind of where you get into the situation where, like, yeah, they might need distribution or a publisher to be finished. They might need some money to see it all the way through. Or a game might break through at IGF that, like, oh man, like, this is really cool. You could finish it as it is for not a lot of money, but what if instead you had this budget instead? Let's go make it something even bigger. And sometimes that works out and sometimes it doesn't. But I think that's where you get something like that. I think the IGF generally does a good job of doing something to that effect, and it's not the same as, I mean, Summer Game Fest, you know, like Keeley's going to have his big show and some of the people have paid to be there, and all of those games have publishers already. Even the games, you know, even the games at Day of the Devs, generally speaking, already have publishers and release plans, and you know, like they're going to be finished and shipped. IGF is where things get a little more raw, and you're just like, I don't know, man, there's some fucking weird conceptual stuff here that is never going to be something you're ever going to play. It's not ever going to make it to Steam or even itch, but it's someone's out there with it. Someone's got a build of it. And so, yeah, I think that's the purest form of what you're asking for. I think it technically already exists. Yeah. Alex included a screenshot or an image of the box shot of Zoop in this email. I think that's important. Think of the box art for Zoop for the SNES while I read this next email. Do you think it will ever be socially or culturally acceptable to depict 9/11 in a video game? Maybe a future Black Ops game or something could be the first game to truly break the seal on that. Will there ever come a time when the tragic events of that day can be litigated through the lens of video games? Or will it forever be considered in poor taste and relegated to edgy mods and poorly received VR titles? Yeah, I mean, I do think that, you know, I think it depends on what you're asking for. If you're looking for something where you are a playable character during the events of 9/11, I don't know what that is, other than if you're doing the Call of Duty shock value, this civilian is walking away very slowly, and then the screen turned red, and you're like, oh my god, the horrors. Right, yes, Medal of Honor. That 2010 Medal of Honor game had audio related to 9/11 in its prologue. I think something like that, where, you know, the story you're about to tell is informed by the events. I think we've already seen some of that. And yeah, okay, yeah. Space Lucidaire says Army of Two showed it on a TV. So yeah, I do think that you end up with those things where it's like they want to try to ground their game in reality by saying, hey, you know, 9/11 happened here. But I don't know what else you would want. Like, what, you know, the tragic events of that day be litigated through the lens of video games. Like, you know, are you going to fly the planes? Like, I don't think that's going to happen in any kind of like responsible video game. Even, you know, are you going to be the guy, the let's roll guy, and then, you know, try to rush a cockpit like the, you know, no, I don't think that was, I don't think that, I'm thinking through the things of 9/11 and trying to think like, what would you even do that would be like a responsible gameplay thing that you could do there. But I don't really think that, I don't really think there's necessarily a way to depict those things outside of that kind of like boring and I think cheap trick that Call of Duty has used in some years, where it's like, oh, a nuke went off and your main character is dying. Like, that was a defining characteristic of some of those early Call of Duty games, and then it kind of became a weird joke where they had done it so many times of just like, oh, your main character died. Do you even remember his name? You're like, I don't know. He was a guy in a tank. And then a nuke went off, I guess. I don't know. Like, okay, there was a terrorist attack, and there was a kid on the street. I don't know. And so, you know, I think you could maybe do something like that, but what is that? That's like, you're like, I'm getting an ice cream, and I'll look up and, oh my gosh, and then you've got to run away and you don't make it. You know, like that would be the Call of Duty thing. And maybe they have thought about doing that. I think that they probably have, you know, because there was a long time when they were doing that in every other game or something, right? Every other Call of Duty had one of those sequences. So yeah, I mean, I think there are plenty of games that have been informed by it, plenty of games that have referenced it, but I think in terms of just like, you know, are you gonna have 9/11 represented directly in a video game? I don't know that there's much there to do that is that needs to be done. That you'd be like, I've got something to say about this, and this is going to be a really meaningful, you know, like that wouldn't just be like, oh, I saw it on a TV, and now we're fighting the terrorists. Now we're fighting the war on terror. How great that's gone. You know, you get a sequence where people have to take their shoes off at the airport, and you go like, now we're safe. Like, there's, I don't know, there's like there's a lot of like kind of weird stuff around that I think it's not especially engaging or not especially necessary. So yeah. Let's see here. Grant writes in, I don't know, man. Why does it take them several years not to... Okay, well, the subject line here is, why is Western AAA game development so broken? Why does it take them several years not to make something and then get shut down? Or something really bad and uninspired, yet seemingly no one had the guts to cancel it? Really weird what is happening right now. This is why it still doesn't feel like the generation has started. It feels so hollow. Seriously, the only game that makes me go, this looks next gen is GTA 6. So, I think that like things are in a really weird place, and I think that, games got really expensive to make, and that there's growing pains as a result of that. I think there are still a lot of games getting made on a regular basis that you would, consider to be, AAA games. But I do think that, the work from home stuff, the pandemic stuff, like all of that stuff happening kind of put a blocker into this thing that, that then is now, been exacerbated by a variety of other things. The interest rates going up, and so it's harder to borrow money. And so, these companies that thought they were going to grow forever didn't. And, all of that stuff, some of the decisions made over the last 5 years, I think have been really nasty. I think it's really hard to make changes. Yeah, these large companies don't change overnight. And so, the overnight reality of game development having to happen at home as a result of the pandemic, pushed everybody back a chunk of time. And then, there was like just one more thing and one more thing and one more thing on top of all that stuff until we get here to where now it's like, okay, now like game console prices haven't dropped at all. And in fact, they've gone up in some cases because the way the economy is. And so I think you have a lot of external factors here that all add up to these games getting pushed back, these games taking longer to make than you thought they were, and also costing more than maybe you thought they would. Combined with like all of those like, oh man, we're going to grow forever. We're going to hire a bunch of people. Oh wait, now we have to lay a bunch of people off. Oh God, we have to keep laying people off. Like the decisions made around the pandemic, and how responsible those were or weren't, is certainly a factor here as well. There's been a lot of talk about, and this is not necessarily directly related to what you're talking about, but it was something that people saw coming out of PAX. That has been termed, I don't have the name of whoever coined it, but the deprofessionalization of video games and video game development. And that we're seeing more and more small games from small teams and small studios and, like all of that stuff. And they don't have things like healthcare. They don't have things like a company backing them up to ensure that they're going to get a salary. And like the risk has gone up as these things have become less professional, because the professional end of the video game industry has become such a bloodbath. That's the sort of thing that's going to have a dramatic knock-on effect for years to come. Not just right now with where we are. And What does that mean for games that are made by big teams? And, you have like all sorts of things. You have maybe a certain company has a CEO who really believes in this AI shit. And so they're just like, we're cutting 30% of people because a computer's going to make these video games. And I'm like, no. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. Even if that does happen, it's not going to be the quality. You're still going to need people to do the real work that comes out of the fucking computer and fix it. And so that's why a lot of people latched on to Clair Obscur in a really weird way. Not, saying the game was good, but a lot of people latched onto it and said, like, this is made by only 30 people worked on this game, which is not true. Like there were more hands on that game than it seems. And so you have some people kind of beating the drum the wrong way, and they go like, look, Clair Obscur is an amazing video game and it was made by a small team, so everyone can do it. It's like, no, dude, that's not. How long did they spend? What did they do? What was their expertise before that? The other thing we're going to run into at a lot of these larger companies too is they keep laying people off is the brain drain. We were talking about like Bungie and how many people are there who were there when Marathon was made. I don't think necessarily that those people need to stay, but also it's people who cut their teeth somewhere else, or went somewhere else and did it. Like, oh, I worked at this studio for a lot of years and then I had to go start something new and do this. And but I still have 11 years of experience. And so I know where we can cut the corners. I know where we can do this. And so there are a lot of extenuating circumstances surrounding Clair Obscur in particular that you just go like, this is not, it's great that they made this. Like, I don't want to take anything away from it. It was not made by the largest team in the world, but to try to hold it up as some example of just like, everyone should just do this is so fucked. It's so not how anything works. Like, I don't think anything about that game is going to be a blueprint for the future. In terms of how it was made and all of that other stuff. Like, will we see some more optimizations or things along the way where you go like, oh, maybe, there's ways to do this with fewer people? Like, sure, there are probably ways to get away with that. Especially if you're a smaller studio and everyone owns a piece of it or whatever, and thus they're incentivized to work the long, insane hours because they're just like, well, if it works out on the other end, we're all going to get rich. Whereas if you're working for Ubisoft, like what? Maybe you get some stock options that are fucking underwater immediately. It's a very different situation there too. So, anyway, whatever. That's a very long-winded way of saying like there are a zillion reasons why some games get canceled or don't come out the way you think they're going to or whatever. And I think when you're a large company with a large team, it can be hard to make moves. And no one's even really sure what the moves are yet. A lot of people are still trying to fucking figure that out. And so there's no one formula, especially, crossing genres and styles and everything else. There's no one formula that you can follow to say, here's how we make a great game with fewer people. It's all going to be in the scope, and what is the scope of the game you're making? Is it going to stay that size, or are you going to, is it going to blow up over the course of development because you added a bunch of stuff to it later on? It's fucking complicated. That's all I really know about game development. It's fucking complicated. Steve writes in and says, for Summer Game Fest, have you heard anything about international teams or individuals being hesitant or deciding to go or declining to go based on current immigration practices? It seems like a crapshoot when entering or exiting the country. Not great. I have not heard anything specific about Summer Game Fest in particular, but I know around GDC, that was starting. You were starting to see some people that from outside the US being like, hey, with the way things are going right there, I don't feel comfortable coming into the country because I don't know what's going to happen while I'm there. I am currently like, I have an opportunity to leave the country for a thing down the line here that I am thinking about. And even I'm going like, I don't know, like, am I gonna, like, what am I gonna run into on the way back in? Less than most other people. I feel confident in saying that. But like, stuff is all over the place that I'm just like, I don't know, man. But yeah, I imagine that there are plenty of people who are having those conversations and thinking about it and making decisions one way or the other about what they're doing. I do know that I have a handful of interviews booked with people who don't live in the US. So it's not like no one from outside the US is coming in for Summer Game Fest, but yeah, I know, especially around GDC, there was a lot of like, there was a lot of discussion around that. Even from people who lived in the US, even like some trans people who were like, I don't know if I feel comfortable getting on a plane right now. And flying around and going through any sort of security checkpoint with everything that's going on. And, like there was just a lot of stuff across the board. So, yeah, I don't, there, again, nothing specific, but I think you're right. It has been kind of a crapshoot. And I know, like, there has been at least some hesitation, at least, like, I think that topic is being discussed a lot these days, when it comes to coming into the US. Let's see if we have any more emails here that we want to take before we wrap it up. My throat is not holding up super well. Weird, when you're sick or getting over being sick, if you then talk for 3 hours, it's like this whole thing. This is a disturbing story. Dante writes in and says, last week you mentioned some Virtua Fighter news coming out of Evo Japan, but you didn't mention the most important news. Tattoo Assassins is being uncanceled. I've played this game once and it's kind of not total shit, so I'm looking forward to this project. Here's a link if you're interested. So, these EXA guys, is that really coming out, or is that? So yeah, from the sounds of things, at Evo Japan, they announced that Tattoo Assassins was going to be released in some capacity for this arcade platform called X Alive, that like the people that run it have been like a pretty negative presence overall in the scene. So, but it looks like that they are working with whoever owns the rights to it to bring it back, and they're going to rebalance it and fix some bugs and so on. A version of it got out a while ago, and that's playable in MAME right now, which may not be for much longer, considering the way that these fucking guys have behaved in the past. So yeah, that's a weird, I don't know. Sure. Tattoo Assassins. It's not a good game. It's not actually a good game. I don't care how much you rebalance it. I don't think it's a very good game. But there you have it. Okay, that's going to do it. Thanks everybody for emailing in. podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Send in some emails to me. And we're a couple of weeks out from everything, right? I mean, the Switch is going to come out in a little over 2 weeks, and then Summer Game Fest happens literally the same day, or at least I think, Keely's live stream that is the kickoff for it. So strap in. I am planning to be here with you Wednesday and Friday, but as I said at the top of the show, there's a lot of work happening to the home. There's a lot of walls. There's a wall over here that is going to get completely torn out. It's my opportunity to hide something in the wall. I don't know. Should I hide something in the walls? I don't know. Think about it. But yes, barring any sort of obstructive construction, I will be with you here on Wednesday and Friday. Take care of yourselves until then. And I'll see you soon. Bye.